Hey guys, tonight we slip back through time to a Rome you've never seen. The Rome that trembles, not from barbarian armies or burning cities, but from a secret drama playing out behind temple walls. The year is 73, the Senate is restless, the streets reek of wet stone and olive oil, and across the forum, every eye keeps drifting to the sacred house of the Vestal Virgins. Torches flicker along the marble colonnades, the crowd shifts uneasily, bracing for news that could mean fortune or utter ruin for everyone. In the still pre-dawn chill, you stand at the edge of the Temple of Vesta, heart pounding, stomach tight. Everyone's fate, yours included, hinges on one girl and whether she's as pure as she claims. If she fails her sacred vows, the gods might punish not just her but the entire city. No pressure, right? Tonight you're going to see just how much a single life could matter when Rome believed purity held back disaster. And let's be honest, you probably won't survive this. Not without losing a few illusions about how much your own destiny is in your hand. Stick around as you find out how one girl's purity became the key to Rome's survival. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your city. Would you have survived in ancient Rome? Drop your location in the comments. Remember, tonight, Rome's destiny is riding on the choices of a girl you've never met, and by sunrise, everything could change. So let's begin, while the lamps are still burning, and before the city wakes up to find out whether it's blessed or cursed by dawn. You walk with the crowd, shifting from the busy, noisy street into the dimmer, sacred hush of Rome's heart. The house of the Vestal Virgins sits in a leafy enclosure just behind the round temple of Vesta, its doorway guarded night and day. People slow their steps as they pass, glancing sideways, making signs against bad luck. Everyone knows the city's luck comes from what happens here, not in the Senate, not in the emperor's bedroom, but in a place where only women sworn to silence may go. You press forward, drawn by a mix of curiosity, fear, and the heady scent of laurel, incense, and something sharper, the knowledge that one slip, one rumor, could doom you all. Rome's sacred virgins and their heavy burden. That's the real headline here. Most people think the fate of empires turns on armies, laws, or trade, but for hundreds of years, Romans believed that their city's survival depended on the absolute, unblemished purity of a handful of girls, 6 to be exact. Chosen before puberty from the proudest patrician families, they became the Vestal Virgins, living symbols of Rome's contract with the gods. If a Vestal kept her vow of chastity, Vesta would keep Rome's hearth burning, literally and metaphorically. If she failed, disaster would follow. Floods, fires, famines, invasions. Every calamity could be blamed on a single slip beneath those white linen veils. That's why the House of the Vestals is more fortress than home. Its high walls shield the chosen girls from prying eyes, and also from temptation. Inside, every detail is designed to reinforce discipline. A central courtyard blooms with roses and myrtle, but you're never alone there. Marble statues of past Vestals watch over the garden, cold-eyed reminders of the price of failure. You can almost feel the pressure in the air, centuries of expectation, whispers and the faint, ever-present fear that any one of these girls might slip, taking the city down with her. Imagine being one of those 6 girls. You're not just a person anymore, you're a living charm, a lighting rod for hope and anxiety. The entire city watches you, celebrates you, and sometimes resents you. On feast days you sit in the best seats at the circus and theatre. People bow or avert their eyes as you pass, but that honour is a double-edged sword. No friends, no lovers, no mistakes allowed. Step out of line and your body becomes the city's evidence, inspected, judged, and if necessary sacrificed. It's a weird kind of celebrity. You don't get fans, you get worshippers and watchers. Even your clothing marks you out. A Vestal wears a long white tunic, a thick woolen band wound around her head, and a special braided hairstyle that sets her apart from every other woman in Rome. You can own property, free slaves, even give evidence in court, but you can't touch or be touched, not even by your own family, except under strict ritual conditions. The reason? Your purity isn't just a private virtue, it's public property. If you break your vow, you're not just letting yourself down, you're dooming Rome. And there are reminders everywhere. Step outside the house. And every look tells you people are thinking the same thing. Is she still pure? Is the city safe? Sometimes, just for a moment, you want to scream or disappear, but you keep walking, feeling the weight of 1,000 years pressing on your back. How did this wild setup come to be? It all goes back to Rome's earliest myths. The city's obsession with fire, and the idea that the survival of a people could depend on invisible qualities, luck, favor, virtue, and especially chastity. The goddess Vesta, keeper of the hearth, was thought to dwell inside the eternal flame at the heart of the temple. As long as that fire burned, Rome would stand. To keep it burning, the city needed not just wood and oil, but purity, a living link to the divine. So the Romans built a system as beautiful as it was terrifying. They found girls young enough to be molded, old enough to be promising, and placed them inside a gilded cage. If they succeeded, they were honored for life. If they failed, they became scapegoats, buried alive beneath the city they'd once protected. All this, just to keep the gods on your side. You might be thinking, surely it can't all rest on one girl? But to the Romans, it absolutely did. The story of Rome's rise is full of warnings about what happens when purity falters. Livy, the city's great historian, loved to tell stories about Vestals who lost their way and the chaos that followed. Whenever Rome faced disaster, someone always checked the Vestals first just in case. Picture the anxiety. Soldiers returning from defeat. Senators whispering about omens. Mothers clutching children tighter when news of a famine breaks. And in the middle of it all, one teenager, staring at the ceiling of her marble cell, wondering if anyone will ever see her as just a girl again. And it's not just the city that gets nervous. The girls themselves live on a knife's edge. Any misstep, a giggle with a stranger, a look that lingers too long, can spark rumors. Once a Vestal was accused of letting the sacred fire go out because she was thinking about a lover. She claimed it was the wind's fault, but the city didn't buy it. The punishment? A beating, sometimes by the Pontifex Maximus himself, the highest priest in Rome. Sleep doesn't come easy here. Every night, you listen for footsteps. Is it a friend coming to comfort you, or a priest coming to accuse you? Even dreams can feel dangerous. You don't want to give anyone a reason to wonder. Of course, not every day is a nightmare. There are moments of peace, of sisterhood, of real pride in what you represent. You help perform Rome's greatest rituals, like making the mulla salsa, the sacred flour sprinkled on sacrificial victims, or pouring libations at the city's biggest festivals. People bring you gifts, ask for your prayers. For a few hours, you can almost forget the stakes, but the tension never really goes away. When something goes wrong, a fire, a plague, a military defeat, the city's suspicion always circles back to the house of the Vestals. Did someone slip? Was a vow broken? Has Rome's luck finally run out? Tonight is one of those nights. You can feel it in the air, a brittle, electric uncertainty. Whispers swirl that the sacred fire flickered, that someone saw a Vestal crying, that the city's fortunes are about to turn. You glance at your sisters, looking for reassurance, but everyone's eyes are tight with worry. Even the marble statues seem to lean in, waiting for the verdict. There's a kind of cruel logic at work. If everything good depends on purity, then any disaster must mean impurity somewhere, and if impurity is found, someone has to pay. This is the burden the Vestal Virgins carry. It's not just about personal virtue, it's about holding the entire city's fate in your hands, and knowing that, at any moment you could be called to answer for something you didn't do. As you drift through the corridors of the house, every echo, every flicker of candlelight, seems charged with meaning. You pass the atrium where the sacred fire burns, tended all night by a rotating watch. The smell of smoke and incense is thick, comforting, but also a reminder of what's at stake. If the fire goes out, it's not just a minor accident. It's a sign from the gods, a message that something or someone is deeply wrong. Sometimes you wonder what the city would do if it ever truly lost faith in its guardians. Would Rome collapse overnight? Or would it simply find new scapegoats, new stories to tell itself about why things go wrong? But for now, all you can do is wait. Wait and hope and trust that your own purity is enough to keep disaster at bay. And so the city watches, and you watch the city. Every heartbeat, every breath, every silent prayer woven into the hush of the house. The future hangs on a single thread, a girl's vow, a city's hope, a fire that must never go out. It's a lot to ask of anyone, let alone a child. But this is Rome, where the stakes are always high, and history is always watching. And yes, in case you're wondering, the Vestals did sometimes get days off, but their idea of a day off was a trip to the Forum, trailed by guards and watched by half the city. Imagine trying to enjoy a gelato with 100 people betting on whether you'll trip. So next time you hear someone say a one person can't change history, just remember the house of the Vestals. Sometimes one girl's purity is all that stands between survival and disaster. And in ancient Rome, everyone knew it. You barely have time to breathe before the next ordeal. The selection process itself. If you think middle school talent shows are stressful, imagine being called before the highest priests of Rome, while your entire family holds its collective breath, hoping you're the lucky one chosen to be the living insurance policy for the city's future. The pressure isn't just on you, it's a cloud that hovers over your mother's anxious face, your father's rehearsed smile, and your older brother's too eager attempts at bravado, all because this year you fit the requirements. Young, healthy, patrician, and crucially old enough to know what's happening, but not so old as to have been tainted by the world. The announcement comes in a way you'll never forget. A solemn procession marches through the Forum, priests in snow-white robes, a crier declaring names, the faces of Rome's elite craning for a glimpse. When your name is called, there is no turning back. You feel your legs wobble as your parents step forward, offering you up with all the pride and fear that a Roman mother and father can muster. Somewhere in the crowd, someone whispers, "She's so young," and the city's attention narrows down to you, a single child destined to tip the scales of Rome's fortune. The process isn't a lottery, but it's close. The Pontifex Maximus, Rome's chief priest, and a handful of his colleagues deliberate over a shortlist. The selection criteria are secretive but ruthless. Your lineage must be pure, your parents must both be alive, and you must never have been punished or shamed. If you're the daughter of a disgraced senator, forget it. If your uncle's been caught in a scandal, don't bother showing up. Rome doesn't just want purity in spirit, it wants purity on the family tree. In that moment, you're scrutinized in ways that are both grand and painfully intimate. Priests and augurs check for omens, reading your face and the set of your shoulders as though the city's fate could be found in the arch of your brow. An elderly woman in the crowd crosses herself with trembling fingers, whispering a prayer for you or maybe for herself, because a new Vestal means the gods are being appeased, at least for another year. After you're chosen, the ceremony turns serious. You're led by the hand through the heart of Rome, past statues and temples, through crowds that part like water around you. The feeling is surreal. Pride battles with terror, or with the first pangs of homesickness. You know, as you step across the temple threshold, that your childhood just ended, and your old life has become the stuff of stories other girls will whisper about. Your family stands at the doorway for a long, awkward moment. It's both a celebration and a funeral. On the one hand, their daughter is now a Vestal Virgin, honoured for life. On the other, she belongs to Rome now, body and soul, her fate forever entwined with the city's fortune. There are gifts from grateful clients, whispered blessings, and a few teary eyes. But you, in your new, white veil, can only think of the world you've left behind. The warmth of your mother's hand, the comfort of a father's joke, the sound of your own name spoken with love instead of reverence. Once inside, the reality sets in. The House of the Vestals is both palace and prison. You're greeted by the other Vestals, each one an expert at hiding nerves behind practiced smiles. The oldest, the Virgo Maxima, offers a measured welcome, her eyes sharp with experience. She's both mentor and warden. You are shown your sleeping quarters, a narrow bed, a chest for your few belongings, and a small window looking out over the garden, where you will soon learn the names of every tree and bird, just for something to think about at night. The orientation is fast and brutal. You'll rise before dawn every day, the Virgo Maxima says. You'll eat with the others, pray with the others, and sleep when you're told. Most important, never, ever be alone with a man. Never let the sacred fire die. Never break your vow. There's no room for rebellion or complaints. Not here. If you slip, Rome will know. The transition is almost theatrical. One minute you're a child of privilege, playing in your family's atrium, the next you're a sacred symbol, every movement weighed and watched. Your old friends drift away. Some are jealous, some are terrified of tainting you with their own ordinary problems. At festivals, you'll sit in a special place, visible but unreachable. At home, your family's name shines brighter, but their house feels emptier. You discover quickly that your new life is ruled by both rituals and routines. Each morning begins with the soft sound of water pouring from a clay jug, a ritual purification that marks the boundary between girlhood and sacred duty. You tie your sash, arrange your veil, and practice the careful, almost dance-like movements needed to tend the eternal flame. Any hesitation is corrected with a stern word or a disapproving glance. There are no secrets in the house of the Vestals. Every mistake, no matter how small, is witnessed and remembered. The lessons continue. You are taught the old prayers, the ancient chants, the precise gestures required for every festival and sacrifice. There's a particular way to grind grain for the mala salsa, a sacred flour that only a Vestal can make. You learn how to pour libations with a steady hand, how to walk in procession with just the right amount of solemnity, never smiling, never looking distracted. One misstep, and people talk for days. At first you try to memorize everything, convinced that if you work hard enough, the anxiety will fade. It doesn't. Instead, it sharpens into a constant awareness, a sixth sense for who's watching and what they expect. You start to see the house as a stage and yourself as both actor and audience, playing a role whose lines were written centuries before you were born. There's a paradox at the heart of it all. The city wants you to be both invisible and unforgettable. If you attract too much attention, something's wrong. If you fade from memory, the city grows nervous, worried the gods will forget you too. You see it most clearly on the day of your first public appearance. The Festival of Vesta is one of Rome's great spectacles, and you're at its center. Dressed in flawless white, you lead the procession through the crowded streets, eyes fixed straight ahead. People bow as you pass, some with real reverence, others with a superstitious fear that borders on resentment. You can sense the muttered prayers, half for you, half for themselves. After all, if you falter, it's not just your problem anymore. The whole city pays the price. In the chaos of the celebration, you catch the eye of a girl your age, someone you used to know, who now stands behind her mother, watching with a mixture of envy and pity. For a moment you want to run to her to tell her you're still the same person, but the city has already decided you're a Vestal now, and nothing will ever be simple again. There are perks, of course. Vestals are the only women in Rome allowed to own property in their own names. If you're wrongly accused of a crime, you get a fairer hearing than most. You're immune from some of the humiliations other women endure. No marriage at 12, no subordination to a husband or father. In the Forum, even senators step aside to let you pass. Sometimes you find comfort in these privileges. Other times they feel like window dressing on a gilded cage. As weeks pass, you begin to see the subtle hierarchies within the house itself. The older Vestals hold knowledge and power, the younger ones look to them for cues. Rivalries are quiet, but fierce. Praise is rare, criticism sharp. If a new girl fumbles a prayer or drops an offering, she'll be reminded of it for months. Sometimes by a sarcastic joke, sometimes by a silent, withering stare. There are no friends here, only sisters bound by duty, each one aware that the other's mistakes could bring disaster down on them all. Night brings little relief. You lie in your narrow bed, listening to the soft sounds of the city, the distant roar of revelers, the clatter of wagon wheels, the lonely song of a nightingale perched somewhere in the garden. You wonder if your old life was ever real, or if you've always belonged to the gods. There's a saying whispered among the youngest Vestals. You can leave your family, your home, and your past, but you can never leave Rome. It's meant as a joke, but it carries a darker truth. The city's needs are endless, its expectations crushing. If you ever slip, if the gods ever look away, there will be nowhere to hide. As the months pass, your confidence grows. The rituals become second nature, the weight of the city's gaze a little easier to bear. You make peace with your role, find moments of laughter in shared chores, and even learn to appreciate the strange kind of power you now wield. But always, underneath it all, is the knowledge that you are only ever one mistake away from disaster. Once, during a rainstorm, the sacred fire sputtered dangerously low. Panic seized the house. Everyone rushed to fix the problem, and you worked faster than you'd ever moved before, sweat stinging your eyes despite the cold. Later you would joke about it, but in that moment, you understood what it meant to hold the city's fate in your hands. Every so often, the Pontifex Maximus visits for inspection, a grand, terrifying affair. The priests quiz you on obscure rituals, test your memory of prayers, and inspect the temple for signs of neglect. These visits are reminders that, no matter how much you learn or how well you serve, your place here is never truly secure. Someone is always watching, always waiting for proof that the gods are still on your side. On rare afternoons, you're allowed to walk in the city under guard. People stare. Some make gestures of blessing, others avert their gaze. You are a symbol, not a person. Your private hopes and fears invisible beneath the layers of ritual and expectation. Every night, before you sleep, you kneel before the sacred fire and whisper the city's ancient prayers. You ask for strength, for wisdom, and for the grace to never make a mistake that could cost not just your own life, but the lives of thousands. You know the city is listening, holding its breath, hoping you're up to the task. You close your eyes, letting the smoke and silence settle over you like a blanket. The house of the Vestals is quiet, but outside, the city stirs, waiting, watching, wondering if the gods are still with them. Dawn comes early in the house of the Vestals, and with it, a kind of ritualized certainty. The city outside may pulse with chaos, brawling street vendors, frantic senators, the braying of livestock and the wails of mothers. But inside these walls, every day unfolds like clockwork. You wake not to bird song but to the soft shuffling of feet, the faint crackle of the sacred fire, and the quiet urgency of duty. Today, you will take the oath, a ceremony as ancient as Rome itself, binding you in words that both protect and imprison. The other Vestals gather in the atrium, faces shadowed by flickering lamplight. There's no laughter, no morning gossip. This isn't a birthday, a festival, or a family rite of passage. It's a public transformation, from girl to goddess's guardian, from private citizen to the living property of the Roman state. At the far end of the hall, the Pontifex Maximus waits, resplendent in his ceremonial robes, eyes shrewd and unblinking. You can feel his gaze weighing your worth, measuring your resolve. The oath of chastity is spoken in clear, ringing Latin, its syllables heavy with threat and promise. You repeat after the Pontifex, hands trembling, knees pressed into the cold stone. The words are not a request, they are a command, witnessed by gods and mortals alike. I vow to keep the fires of Vesta burning, to remain pure in body and mind, to serve Rome for 30 years without stain or suspicion. Should I break this trust, may the gods and the city judge me. That last part hangs in the air, colder than any marble statue. You know the stories, the warnings whispered at night. For a Vestal, pure means more than abstaining from lovers. It means living without even the shadow of scandal. A rumor is as deadly as a confession. Your chastity is more than private virtue. It's public currency, the stuff of omens, political intrigue and everyday gossip. The city is obsessed with your purity. Ancient law books, temple murals, and market day superstitions all agree. A Vestal's body is Rome's firewall against chaos. That's why the ritual is so elaborate. Why, once the words are spoken, you're no longer quite human. Your skin belongs to the goddess. Your time belongs to the city. Your reputation is shared by everyone, from emperor to beggar. The ceremony doesn't end with vows. Next comes the investiture, a long, unspooling sequence of purification rites. You're sprinkled with holy water, crowned with the infulla, a woolen headband, and wrapped in a stola so white it almost glows. The Pontifex marks your brow with ashes from the sacred hearth. You try not to flinch as the cold touch lingers. The others watch with solemn pride. They know what's at stake. When the final prayer is spoken, the congregation files out, leaving you in the hushed, echoing hall. Outside, the city erupts in noisy celebration, but here, the silence is total. You look down at your hands, So small, so suddenly adult. The ring of vows weighs heavier than any jewelry. You are a Vestal Virgin now, and Rome expects perfection. The news spreads quickly. By midday, every street corner has heard your name. Every busybody aunt has told the story of your family's triumph. In the forum, statues are draped with garlands. At home, your parents accept congratulations with a strange mixture of pride and grief. Their daughter is honored above all others, but also lost to them in a sense, for decades. But the city's celebration is never just about you. Rome isn't only celebrating your purity, it's reassuring itself. Every time a new Vestal takes her vow, the city sighs with relief. The gods are appeased. For now, disaster is held at bay. Even the weather seems to play along. With a rare breeze rustling through the dusty streets, people gather in the shadow of the temple, throwing coins into fountains and muttering quick prayers. Shopkeepers hang fresh laurel, children peek through the gates, and priests move about with unusual confidence. The whole city, in a way, becomes your audience. Hopeful, demanding, a little superstitious, always watching. But behind the relief is a sharp edge of expectation. Rome's patience is thin. A Vestal must never show weakness, fatigue, or longing for her old life. Even a stray tear could set off a chain reaction of rumors. And the priests, who praise you in public, are even sharper in private. They remind you that you are now part of the city's spiritual backbone, a living contract between mortals and gods. There are practical changes too. You no longer eat with your family or walk alone. Meals are formal, ritualized, and surprisingly quiet. Conversation centers on duty, tradition, and the latest news from the city. Even the food is symbolic, plain but plentiful, never indulgent, always served with an eye to ritual purity. Your diet is said to affect the health of Rome itself. No pressure, right? Eat your lentils or the Tiber might flood. You are introduced to your new responsibilities in careful, measured steps. First comes the tending of the sacred flame, a job that never ends. The fire must be watched day and night. If it flickers, the city shudders. If it goes out, the blame is immediate, and the suspicion falls first on the youngest. You learn to move silently through the temple, eyes fixed on the flickering light, hands steady as you add new wood, stir the embers, whisper the ancient chants. Sometimes you think you can feel the gods themselves breathing on your neck, waiting to see if you will fail. Next come the rituals, daily prayers, sacrifices, and the endless maintenance of the temple's altars and shrines. Each gesture is prescribed, each word memorized. You are drilled by older Vestals until you can recite the prayers in your sleep. Sometimes you do. Mistakes are not just embarrassing, they are dangerous. One dropped offering, one mispronounced word, and the city's luck might break. Perhaps the hardest part is the surveillance. Vestals are never alone. Even in sleep, someone is always close. Sometimes just a curtain away, sometimes sitting in silent vigil at the foot of your bed. Privacy vanishes. There is always a pair of eyes, always the sense of being watched. You joke about it sometimes. Who needs a diary when you have 5 sisters and 100 priests? But it wears on you. Dreams become your only refuge. The vow is not all hardship. There is a strange kind of freedom in this cloistered life. For 30 years, you are exempt from marriage, childbirth, and the daily humiliations other Roman women endure. You walk the city with dignity, flanked by guards, sometimes greeted with awe. In a culture obsessed with control, you have a kind of power, subtle, ceremonial, but real. Even the most powerful men bow before a Vestal. If you cross a public square and your litter bumps into a senator's, he moves. You have the right to pardon condemned prisoners on their way to execution. Once in a lifetime, a gesture that echoes through history. But the price is high. The city never lets you forget that your body is no longer your own. You belong to Rome, and Rome is jealous. There are stories always whispered, never written down, about the lengths to which priests will go to protect the city's investment. If a man is caught even speaking to a Vestal in private, he faces exile or death. If a Vestal is seen weeping, questions are asked. If she falls ill, the city's anxiety rises. The standards are impossible, the consequences unimaginable. You become hyper-aware of your movements. Each gesture, Each word is loaded. A smile is encouragement. A glance can be misconstrued. You learn to speak in careful, measured tones, to hide your real thoughts behind ritual phrases. The older Vestals teach you tricks, how to deflect unwanted attention, how to keep secrets without lying, how to let gossip roll off your back. The city, one of them whispers, wants a miracle, not a person. Remember that, and you'll survive. Still, rumors swirl. Rome is a city of voices, markets, baths, temples, taverns, all filled with news, gossip, and speculation. You hear your own name sometimes, floating on the hot summer air. The new one seems strong. She's too quiet. Her father bribed the priests. You try not to listen, but the words sink in. You become part of Rome's collective imagination, a story everyone thinks they know. There are moments of rebellion, small, almost invisible acts of resistance. Maybe you sneak a second helping of honey cakes at the festival. Maybe you linger a little too long in the garden, eyes closed, pretending you're anywhere but here. Maybe you write a letter to your old friend, just to remember what it feels like to be normal. These small acts feel daring, almost reckless, but you always return to duty. The city is relentless, and so are the gods. You begin to sense the loneliness that comes with sainthood. No one touches you, no comforting hug, no reassuring pat on the shoulder. Even your family visits are tightly controlled, brief and formal. You start to cherish small moments of kindness. A gentle smile from the Virgo Maxima, a quiet joke at dinner, a warm loaf of bread left by your bedside. These are your lifelines. In the darker hours, you remember the stories of Vestals who failed. The punishments are legendary. Live burial, public shaming, the city plunged into mourning. But the smaller punishments are almost worse. Weeks of isolation, meals taken in silence, prayers said alone. The city is merciless, and it needs someone to blame when things go wrong. And things do go wrong. The Tiber floods, the harvest fails, the enemy approaches the city gates. Each time, eyes turn to the house of the Vestals. Is our guardian still pure? The pressure builds, year after year, vow after vow. Sometimes you wish for escape, a quiet life in the country, a day at the baths, a chance to speak freely. But then you remember the city is counting on you. You are the firewall, the last defense against chaos. And somewhere, deep inside, you take pride in that. 30 years is a long time. Most Vestals serve their full term, honored and respected, eventually marrying if they choose, living out their days as living legends. But every day, every hour, every heartbeat, the oath hangs over you. A shield and a sword, a blessing and a curse. So you keep moving, keep serving, keep praying. The fire never goes out, and neither does the city's expectation. And as you drift off to sleep, surrounded by marble and incense, you wonder, what would happen if, just once, you let yourself be human? You're starting to settle into the patterns of Vestal life, but comfort is a slippery thing in a house where every hour is scripted, every gesture loaded with meaning, and privacy barely exists. The daily reality inside the house of the Vestals is stranger, stricter, and sometimes more stifling than any outsider can imagine. Here, your routine is dictated not just by tradition, but by fear. A fear so subtle and ever-present it becomes as natural as breathing. Your mornings begin while the city is still asleep. You rise in silence, guided by the soft glow of oil lamps, flickering in the marble halls. The air smells of wood smoke and rose water, carried from the courtyard through cool stone corridors. Bathing is a ritual, not a luxury. You wash away the dust of dreams with water that's been blessed for purity, careful to avoid any small breach of custom. Even the act of tying your sash, a long woolen cord wrapped and knotted in a precise pattern, feels like a binding spell, a daily contract renewed. You slip into your linen tunic, feeling the rough fabric against your skin, and wrap the enfola around your head. The weight of the headband is reassuring, but also faintly oppressive. It marks you as sacred, but it's also a reminder there's no such thing as just a girl here. In this house, you are always a Vestal Virgin first, a person second. Breakfast is a silent affair, shared at a low table in the atrium beneath painted ceilings, depicting Vesta's eternal fire and the earliest priestesses. You eat simple food, honeyed bread, figs, soft cheese, sometimes olives or dates if the temple's offerings have been generous. Everything is offered first to the goddess. Sometimes, if you're feeling mischievous, you and your sisters make bets on which offering Vestal will prefer, that is, which one the temple cat will steal when no one's looking. The laughter is brief, quickly stifled when the Virgo Maxima enters, her presence demanding instant composure. After the meal, the day truly begins. Every Vestal has a role, tending the sacred flame, preparing ritual ingredients, maintaining the household's elaborate inventory of sacred vessels and linens. There's sweeping, dusting, endless folding and refolding of ceremonial robes. Even mundane chores feel momentous, watched over by centuries of tradition and the ever-alert eyes of your sisters. You're assigned to the fire today. It's the heart of the temple, literally and figuratively. You kneel beside the circular hearth, the air heavy with incense, and feed olive wood to the dancing flames. The fire's warmth is soothing, but it also burns with a purpose. Its light, reflected in polished bronze, flickers against the painted walls, casting shifting shadows that almost seem to move on their own. If the flame dies, it isn't just an accident, it's a crisis, a sign that Rome's connection to the gods is in danger. The other girls move quietly through the temple. Conversation is hushed, practical. You might share a quick joke, a whispered complaint about sore knees or splinters from the woodpile. But the mood can change in a heartbeat if a priest enters. The male clergy, always present, always imposing, are both guardians and judges. Their approval means little. Their disapproval can mean everything. You learn quickly to read the subtle signals of the house. The rustle of silk in the corridor means the Virgo Maxima is coming. A certain cough or shuffle signals that a visiting senator is nearby, perhaps hoping to catch a glimpse of the city's most mysterious women. You become expert at fading into the background, keeping your face neutral, your eyes modestly lowered. Sometimes you feel like you're walking through your own life as a ghost, unseen except when needed for ceremony or spectacle. Not all is solemn, of course. In the quiet hours of the afternoon, the younger Vestals steal moments of humanity. You might sneak a game of knucklebones in the shade of the courtyard, laugh quietly over an awkward mistake made during a morning ritual, or conspire to share the best pieces of honeycomb left over from an offering. These moments are fleeting, but precious. They remind you that, beneath the white robes and the weight of expectation, you are still a girl among girls, but you never forget the vigilance required. The rules are everywhere, and they touch even the most ordinary parts of your day. You can't laugh too loudly, speak too freely, or linger too long in any place where you might be alone. If a door creaks or a curtain rustles unexpectedly, everyone tenses. No one wants to be the cause of suspicion, not even by accident. Midday brings fresh duties. The Virgo Maxima leads a review of the sacred stores, checking that all ceremonial tools are accounted for, that the special salt for purification rituals is dry, that the temple's wine jars remain unspoiled. Each item is catalogued and inspected. If something is missing, the questions are immediate and pointed. Did someone steal? Did someone forget? The blame, if it falls, is collective. Another reminder that, in this house, your actions can endanger everyone. Afternoons are given to prayer, study, and occasionally visits from outsiders. Ambassadors, priests, and high-ranking women sometimes come to seek the Vestal's blessing or to consult about a troubling omen. When you're chosen to receive visitors, you sit with careful posture, recite the formal greetings, and offer the prescribed words of reassurance or advice. Some visitors treat you with genuine reverence, others with a curiosity that borders on intrusive. You're a living relic, a symbol of the city's deepest anxieties and highest hopes. Sometimes there are special events, festivals where the Vestals lead processions, scatter flowers before statues, or make offerings at the city's main altars. During these times, you feel the full force of Rome's attention. The crowd's cheers ring in your ears, the sunlight glints off your veil, and for a moment you believe the stories believe that your presence, your purity, truly matters. It's intoxicating and a little terrifying. Other days, the outside world is more hostile. If the city has suffered a setback, a failed harvest, an outbreak of disease, a political scandal, suspicion grows sharper. People watch your every move, looking for signs of weakness, guilt, or failure. You might be assigned extra rituals, forced to pray for hours, or ordered to fast as a form of purification for something you never did. The priests become more watchful, your sisters more silent. Night falls slowly, bringing its own rituals and responsibilities. You and another Vestal take turns tending the fire through the dark hours. You whisper the ancient prayers, careful not to let your voice waver. Even when exhaustion threatens to overtake you, the temple at night is both eerie and comforting. A world of shadows and flickering light, where every sound is magnified. Every heartbeat seems louder. Sometimes you lie awake staring at the painted ceiling, listening to the city beyond the walls. You imagine what life would be like outside. Marriage, children, laughter without consequences. The thought is both sweet and bitter. In the house of the Vestals, even dreams can feel like a form of betrayal. In rare moments, you catch a glimpse of the world through the eyes of a visitor. A young girl pressing her face to the temple gate, a merchant leaving coins at the altar, a senator bowing deeply in the corridor. They see mystery, sanctity, perhaps even a little envy. You see the reality, exhaustion, fear, pride, and an endless balancing act between being too visible and not visible enough. Despite everything, a sense of camaraderie slowly forms among the Vestals. You may not be friends in the ordinary sense, but you share something deeper, a collective fate, a constant awareness that any one of you could be the key to the city's fortune or its doom. You learn to trust, to rely on one another, and to find small comforts in shared rituals and whispered jokes. But trust has limits. There are times when a careless word, a strange look, or an unexplained absence sparks tension. Whispered conversations stop abruptly when others enter a room. You never quite forget that, in the end, your sisters might one day be your accusers, or your only defenders. As the years pass, routine becomes habit, and habit becomes a kind of armor. You grow skilled at hiding your feelings, at performing the rituals with flawless precision, at deflecting curiosity and suspicion with practiced grace. The mask of serenity is hard-earned and necessary. You watch the seasons change through the courtyard trees, the blossoms of spring, the dusty heat of summer, the first cold winds of autumn. Each season brings new festivals, new challenges, new reasons for the city to focus its hopes and fears on you. You start to understand the rhythm of it all, the pulse of Rome, the heartbeat of the goddess, the unending cycle of vigilance and ritual. One day, as you kneel beside the sacred flame, you realize that you have almost forgotten what it feels like to be truly alone. The solitude you once dreaded now feels like a rare luxury, a fleeting moment of peace. Snatched between duties, you begin to cherish the quiet hours before dawn, when the house is still and the only sound is the gentle crackle of the fire. There are moments when you are proud, even grateful to be a Vestal. When the city celebrates a victory, when a festival goes perfectly, when the harvest is good and the people are joyful, you feel a thrill of accomplishment. You see the joy in your sisters' faces, hear the gratitude in the prayers of the faithful, and know that, in some small way, you have helped hold disaster at bay, but you never ever let yourself forget what's at stake. Every rumor, every sideways glance, every misstep is a reminder. Rome's fortune, and your own, are always balanced on a knife's edge. The house of the Vestals is both sanctuary and prison, a place of honor and a crucible of fear. As you drift to sleep, the scent of incense clinging to your hair and the soft glow of the sacred fire warming your face, you wonder if tomorrow will be the day that everything changes, or if for another day, you'll manage to keep Rome's oldest and most dangerous secret safe. You'd think the daily grind of rituals, prayers, and sacred chores would be enough to exhaust every ounce of anxiety from your system. But the truth is, the heaviest part of life as a Vestal isn't the work, it's the feeling that you are always being watched. Public scrutiny isn't just a background hum here, it's a constant drumbeat that shapes every second of your existence. Your purity is not simply your own burden, it's the city's obsession. Everyone in Rome, from patrician ladies to illiterate market vendors, has a stake in the state of your soul. The moment you step beyond the marble gate of the house, the transformation is instantaneous. No matter how ordinary you feel, to the outside world you are an object of awe and anxiety, sacred and suspect at the same time. The first thing you notice is the way people look at you, not with simple curiosity, but with the loaded intensity of people inspecting the hinges on a city gate that might give way at any moment. Old men make the sign of the horns to ward off bad luck as you pass. Women clutch their children closer. Even the street dogs seem to keep their distance. The public rituals are the worst. On festival days, when you process through the crowded streets in your blazing white robes and intricate braided hairstyle, you can feel every pair of eyes in Rome fixed on your face. The way you walk, the set of your mouth, the tiniest stutter in your step, each becomes a source of citywide speculation. If you appear serene, the city breathes easier for a while. If you look tired or distracted, the whispers start almost before you've finished crossing the forum. It isn't just the crowds. The city's elite keep close tabs on you as well. Senators and their wives, ambitious equestrians, even the emperor himself, all are invested in your flawless image. Your conduct is public property, debated in bathhouses and discussed over dinner. A smile at the wrong person or a shadow on your face at the wrong time can become a matter for urgent priestly investigation. You might think you could ignore the whispers and focus on your duties, but the culture of suspicion is inescapable. Your fellow Vestals, your guardians, and even your own family are all participants in this grand, unending surveillance. If you're caught sneaking a moment alone, if you're spotted in deep conversation with a stranger, if a neighbor thinks your prayers sounded rushed at the dawn ceremony, any of it can start the slow machinery of rumor. The Senate may seem far away, but in matters of Vestal purity, no rumor is too trivial. Gossip has teeth in Rome, and its bite is dangerous. Sometimes you hear your own name echoing across the city, twisted into a dozen anxious tales. Did you see how pale she looked? I heard she dropped the sacrificial cake last week. What could it mean? My cousin swears she saw a shadow in her window after midnight. At first you laugh these off, but after a while, you start to listen, and then you start to worry. Even within the house of the Vestals, suspicion is the seventh sister. The official rules say you must trust one another. But unofficially, you know that if a scandal threatens, anyone could be forced to turn accuser. There are no locks on your doors, no real privacy. Even the gardens have eyes. The windows of nearby officials and the temple's ever-watchful priests. You share prayers, chores and jokes, but you also watch for signs of straying guilt, rebellion in the faces around you. Sometimes, the pressure cracks the surface. There are tears behind closed doors, sharp words whispered in corridors. An older Vestal might quietly remind you not to linger too long at the fountain or to avoid looking up during the evening procession. These reminders aren't just about obedience. They're survival tactics, hard-won through years of living at the center of Rome's most superstitious web. You become adept at reading a room, averted gazes, hurried footsteps, the tone of a priest's voice. These become as meaningful as any formal command. You learn to hide any flicker of irritation or sadness behind a calm, blank mask. To the world, the Vestal Virgins are serene and untouchable. Inside, you're always on alert, always editing your every word and gesture. Sometimes, the city's anxiety is palpable. During periods of trouble, a bad harvest, a military defeat, an unexplained illness, the focus on you sharpens to a painful intensity. Suddenly, everyone wants proof that the Vestals are still keeping Rome safe. Your house receives a surge of visitors, women desperate for blessings, officials seeking omens, ordinary citizens leaving offerings and frantic notes begging for prayers. Every request is urgent, every question loaded. Is the flame burning as brightly as ever? Has Vesta's favor been lost? In these moments, the smallest lapse becomes a matter of public concern. If you misspeak a prayer, if the sacred fire flickers, even for a moment, the panic spreads faster than wildfire. You see the priests grow stern, your sisters grow silent, and the city's nervous energy surges until it's almost unbearable. You perform your duties with mechanical precision, aware that every mistake, every perceived weakness, will be dissected by the crowds and the priests alike. There are comic moments too, little absurdities that come from being so scrutinized. Once, during a festival, a sudden gust of wind snuffed out a ceremonial candle. The rumor that the Vestals let the sacred flame go out circled the city in a matter of hours. By sunset, the priests were summoned to investigate, and the guilty candle was put on trial. The verdict not a Vestal's fault, just the god's sense of humor. For weeks afterward, people in the market would wink and ask if you'd brought matches. But the laughter is always nervous, edged with the knowledge that Rome's fate is never a joke. The collective anxiety doesn't subside, it simply shifts, flowing like water toward the next potential scandal. Even the innocent moments, a sneeze during a prayer, a cough in the winter cold, are imbued with meaning. Is that an omen? Someone always asks. Should we be worried? Your family, once your refuge, is not immune to this scrutiny. In fact, their standing is directly tied to your reputation. If you maintain your role flawlessly, your family basks in the reflected glory. Doors open, favors are granted, and your brothers might find themselves climbing the social ladder. But if you falter, even if it's only a whisper, your entire family could be shunned, their fortunes reversed overnight. Family pride and fear become an ever-present background noise. During the rare, formal family visits to the house, you see the hope and the terror on your parents' faces. They want you to be happy, of course, but above all, they want you to be perfect. This pressure seeps into every crevice of your life. Even the city's children are taught to revere or at least fear the Vestals. In games, they imitate your solemn processions or pretend to be accused Vestals on trial, complete with mock punishments and dramatic appeals to invisible gods. The myths of fallen Vestals, both real and invented, circulate in nursery rhymes and cautionary tales. You are not just living your own story, you're living everyone else's fears and fantasies too. There are times you catch yourself wishing you could fade into the background, to become just another face in the crowd, but your image is everywhere, painted on temple walls, woven into festival banners, etched into the memories of every Roman who ever prayed for rain or a healthy child. You are a living promise that Rome's luck will hold, unless you give the city reason to doubt. Every year, the scrutiny intensifies around certain festivals or anniversaries of past disasters. Priests, ever vigilant, invent new rituals, new ways to prove that the Vestals are still worthy. You might be ordered to fast, to sleep on the temple floor, to take part in elaborate purification rites designed as much for public reassurance as for divine approval. The message is clear: your purity is not your own, and it must be proven over and over to satisfy the city's endless appetite for certainty. You sometimes wonder what it would feel like to be truly free, to stumble, to laugh too loudly, to love without fear. But in Rome, purity is more than a personal virtue. It's a public necessity, and so you live every day as a kind of performance, one in which a single misstep could bring ruin, not just to you, but to everyone you care about. You learn to find small comforts where you can. A smile shared with a sympathetic priest, a secret note passed among your sisters, the soft sound of rain on the temple roof. These become your anchors. You find solace in routine, in the rituals that give structure to your days and shield you, for a moment, from the city's relentless gaze. But there is never a day when you can truly relax. Even in sleep, you know you might be woken to recite a prayer, to tend the fire, or to answer a midnight summons from the priests. The pressure is constant, unrelenting, and it shapes you into someone at once fragile and unbreakable. And so you carry on, one day at a time, one ritual at a time, holding not just your own fate, but the fate of an entire city, in your trembling, determined hands. If you thought the weight of a city's expectations was enough, try living every day with temptation and danger hiding in plain sight. Despite the House of the Vestal's high walls, its locked doors, its centuries-old routines, the real test of a Vestal's purity wasn't just about following rules, it was about surviving in a city built on spectacle, politics, and desire. The world outside was hungry, chaotic, and filled with hazards, but the dangers inside, hidden and quiet, were just as real. From your very first week, you understand this isn't just a house of prayer and duty, it's a crucible. Rome is teeming with powerful men, ambitious, charming, reckless, who know that even the rumor of a Vestal's affection could be a ticket to legend or leverage in a political game. The city's elite treat the house with reverence, but some treat it as a challenge. The more the priests warn of purity, the more dangerous curiosity becomes. Every Vestal quickly learns to recognize the warning signs. A senator lingering too long near the garden wall, the son of a general conveniently lost in the temple corridors, hoping for a glimpse or a word. The priests are vigilant, but ambition finds cracks. There are gifts left on festival days, flowers, bracelets, tokens, said to bring luck or love. The rules say you must ignore them, but the city's pulse says otherwise. In Rome, nothing is ever left by accident. The dangers aren't always grand, either. Sometimes it's loneliness that tempts you, the ache of wanting to speak freely, to share a secret, to remember you are more than a symbol. You find yourself lingering near the gates on days when the market is busy, straining to catch a snatch of song or the rhythm of normal life. A whispered greeting, a smile from a stranger, a memory of laughter. These are as risky as forbidden wine. Among the Vestals, caution is an unspoken bond. You look out for each other, but you also watch for signs of weakness. If someone seems too quiet, too dreamy, or flushes at the mention of a visitor's name, a silent alarm spreads through the house. Jokes become warnings. Don't trip over your own heart. The older Vestals tease, but their eyes are sharp. In this house, compassion and suspicion walk hand in hand. Temptation, though, is not always about romance. It can be power, pride, or the simple desire to be seen as human, not just holy. You remember the story of Licinia, a Vestal accused of secretly inheriting land from a senator. Was it love, greed, or just a longing for freedom? No one ever found out. She was tried and acquitted, but her name became a cautionary tale for decades. Every whisper of scandal makes your heart race, a warning echoing down the marble halls. Sometimes, the threats come from inside your own mind. Sleepless nights breed strange thoughts. Did you linger too long in the garden? Did you smile too brightly at the festival? Is that shadow at your door a friend or a watcher? The fear of being watched is so constant that it shapes your very dreams. You wake with a gasp, heart pounding, and the first thing you do is check that the sacred fire is still burning, as if purity is something you can measure in glowing coals. But even vigilance has limits. You can't control what others say, what they want, or what they might do. There's always the risk that someone outside will use your name as a pawn. In Rome, accusations could be weapons. A rival family, jealous senator, or scorned lover might spread rumors. I saw her speaking to a man at dusk, or she took an offering from someone she shouldn't. The priests are supposed to investigate fairly, but politics and gossip are more persuasive than truth. All it takes is a single rumor to upend the delicate balance of your life. Jealousy, too, is a real and dangerous force. Among the Vestals, competition simmers beneath the surface. Younger girls vie for praise. Older ones protect their status. The rewards for a perfect reputation are tangible. Better food, more comfortable rooms, the whisper chance of a prestigious marriage when your term ends. But let suspicion fall on you, and even your closest confidants may distance themselves. You learn to watch for shifting alliances, to guard your words carefully, to never share more than you can afford to lose. Not all threats are malicious. Sometimes the danger comes from kindness. An old friend visits, bringing news from home, a token from your mother, or a favorite sweet from your childhood. You ache to accept the comfort, but rules are rules. Nothing from outside is allowed without inspection. Nothing personal can pass unspoken through the walls. Even a gift of fruit must be registered and blessed. The longing to hold something familiar, to taste a piece of your old life, becomes a quiet torture. The loneliness can be suffocating. There are nights when you lie awake, staring at the painted ceiling, listening to the soft breathing of your sisters. You remember how it felt to laugh with friends in your family's garden, to walk unguarded through the city, to be just another girl. In the house of the Vestals, even tears must be hidden. Cry in the garden, and you risk being seen. Weep at night, and you risk being overheard. So you learn to tuck your sadness away, saving it for the silent moments between prayers. The city outside, meanwhile, moves with a restless energy. Scandals erupt and fade. Victories are celebrated and forgotten, but the rumors around the Vestals linger longer than most. Rome never stops watching, never stops wondering what might be happening behind those high walls. The more you try to be invisible, the more the city imagines your secrets. The contrast is almost comic. You living a life of rigid discipline and sacrifice, while the city dreams up romances and rebellions in your honor. And then there are the stories tales that circulate in taverns and markets, growing wilder with every retelling. Some are ancient, some recent, all told in hushed tones, as if they are warnings from the gods themselves. Did you hear about the Vestal who ran away with a gladiator, the one who smuggled a letter to a lover in a loaf of bread, the girl who hid a child in the temple? Most are pure invention, but every legend has a kernel of fear at its heart. You learn to live with this duality. Inside, a life of discipline and duty. Outside, a swirl of fantasy and dread. You become an expert at keeping secrets, both real and imagined. Even your prayers become coded pleas for strength and protection, disguised as routine offerings to the goddess. There are moments of genuine danger. The city is not as safe as it pretends. Political unrest, riots, and even violence sometimes break out close to the temple. On more than one occasion, you and your sisters have had to hide in the innermost rooms, listening to the distant sound of shouting, clutching each other's hands until the threat passes. You wonder if the gods truly protect you, or if it's simply the strength of the house's walls. But even the strongest walls cannot keep out every threat. One day, during a festival, a young Vestal named Claudia drops a ceremonial vessel. The sound rings out across the courtyard, sharp, shocking, the kind of accident that in any other life would mean nothing. But here, the tension is immediate. Eyes narrow, whispers start. Was it just clumsiness, or a sign of distraction? And if she was distracted, who distracted her? You watch as Claudia's face goes pale, her hands trembling as she kneels to gather the fragments. That night, she weeps in silence, her sobs muffled by her pillow. You want to comfort her, but words are dangerous currency. You offer only a squeeze of her hand. Temptation and threat, suspicion and loneliness. They become the rhythm of your days. Every smile, every step, every glance is calculated. You dream of freedom, but you know it comes at a cost you're not sure you can bear. There is, however, a certain pride in your endurance. To survive here is to prove yourself stronger than the city's fears, more steadfast than its gossip, more devoted than its endless curiosity. Some nights you allow yourself a small smile as you tend the sacred fire, knowing you have resisted yet another day's worth of challenges. You are still here. The city still stands, but deep down, you know it could all change in a heartbeat. All it takes is a whisper, a misstep, a single moment when temptation overcomes caution. You are not only responsible for yourself, you are responsible for the city's peace of mind, and so you remain vigilant, watchful, wary, yet determined to hold the line, even as danger and desire press close on every side. Some threats are visible. The senator's calculating glance, the stranger's gift left at the gate. But the most terrifying danger, the one every Vestal dreads, is the slow, silent creep of suspicion. You can perform your duties perfectly for years, never missing a prayer, never so much as pausing beside the wrong person in the corridor, and still, one day, find the city's eyes turning on you. It almost never starts with a shout. Instead, suspicion slithers in on the back of small things. An absent smile, a moment's distraction, the memory of a festival mishap retold with a new slant. Maybe a priest notices you glancing out the window during evening prayers, and his mind, eager for patterns, remembers the story of a Vestal long ago who fell in love with a passing soldier. Maybe a rival, hungry for favor, decides you're getting too much attention from the Virgo Maxima and shares a concern with the priests. Or maybe the city itself, restless and anxious after a run of bad harvests, or a series of omens, decides that someone somewhere must be at fault, and you are the easiest scapegoat. You feel the change before you see it. The conversations around you grow a little quieter. Your sister's eyes dart away when you enter a room. The priests ask more questions. Innocent ones at first, then slightly sharper. You seem tired lately. Is anything troubling you? Have you been keeping to your quarters at night? You answer calmly, but you can hear the gears turning behind their polite words. Outside the house, the city simmers with rumor. You sense it in the way the crowds stare a little too long during processions, in the whispered prayers left at the altar, in the sudden silence that follows your footsteps. If you pass two matrons gossiping in the marketplace, their voices drop. The city's curiosity, once benign, curdles into suspicion. Everyone has a theory. No one trusts the truth. If only suspicion could be met head-on. But the nature of this fear is slippery, impossible to pin down. You have nothing to confess, nothing to hide, but suddenly everything you do is subject to interpretation. If you wake late one morning, it's because you were restless with guilt. If you're unusually careful in tending the fire, perhaps it's an act, a sign that you have something to make up for. If you're quiet at dinner, you're sulking. If you laugh, you're too carefree. There is no way to be perfectly innocent when the city is hunting for impurity. Your family feels it too. They send messages full of concern and coded warnings. Be careful, your mother writes. Don't let them find fault with you. Your father visits more often, but the conversations are strained, heavy with things left unsaid. He stands in the vestibule, clutching your hand, and you can feel his fear for you and for the family's honor trembling beneath his practiced composure. As the tension grows, your world shrinks. The older Vestals draw together, whispering behind closed doors, sometimes including you, sometimes not. They are worried for you, yes, but also for themselves. Suspicion, once started, is contagious. If you are accused, the house itself is tainted. The rituals become sharper, stricter, the days longer. The pressure to be perfect, to erase any doubt, is unbearable. But in Rome, suspicion is as old as the city itself. People crave certainty, and when the gods seem distant, they look for someone to blame. Priests begin quietly asking servants and neighbors about your habits. Has anyone seen you acting strangely? Has a message arrived from outside? Was your behavior at the last festival unusual? There are no secrets here. Even the stones have ears. Sometimes, you wonder who is truly loyal, and who might be waiting for a chance to betray you. Trust is in short supply. One afternoon, you find a small scrap of parchment tucked into your robe, a warning perhaps, or an attempt at comfort. They're watching you. Be careful. You hide it away, uncertain whom to trust with your fear. Every day, the tension coils tighter. As days pass, you notice changes in yourself too. You sleep less. Your hands shake when you pour libations. You start to second-guess every gesture, every word. You replay conversations in your head, searching for innocent remarks that could be twisted into accusations. Did you linger too long in the courtyard? Did someone see you pause at the gate? Paranoia becomes your constant companion, eroding even the small joys you once found in daily rituals. Even dreams are dangerous now. You wake in the night, convinced you hear footsteps outside your door or voices in the garden. Every shadow feels loaded, every silence threatening. When you pray, it's no longer just for the city's safety. It's for your own deliverance from suspicion's invisible snare. Then one evening, a messenger arrives at the house. The priests have called a private meeting, asking you to appear in the inner chamber. You know this is no ordinary inspection. The room is small, stone walls close and cold. The Pontifex Maximus sits at the head of the table, flanked by senior priests, their faces expressionless. The questions are careful, almost gentle at first. You've seemed anxious, daughter. Is there anything you wish to share? You shake your head, keeping your voice steady. But the questions grow sharper, more pointed. Have you received any unauthorized gifts? Has anyone approached you in secret? Have you noticed anything unusual among your sisters? The room grows colder, the air thick with suspicion. You answer truthfully, knowing that the truth alone may not save you. They let you go with a warning: remember your vows. The city depends on you. But the message is clear. You are being watched more closely than ever. You return to your sisters, who look at you with a mix of pity and dread. You want to scream, to protest your innocence, but you know better. In Rome, protest is often mistaken for guilt. The days blur together, marked by tension and silence. The city's mood seems to shift with the wind, sometimes anxious, sometimes accusatory, always watching. You perform your duties with mechanical precision, terrified of any mistake. The sacred fire is tended so carefully that your hands blister. The prayers are recited until your voice is raw. But in the quiet moments you ask yourself, Will it ever be enough? Is there any way to prove purity, to quiet the city's hunger for certainty? You realize, with a sinking heart, that for a Vestal, the answer is almost always no. The pressure builds until it bursts. One morning you wake to find a crowd gathered outside the house, murmuring with excitement and fear. Word has spread, no one knows how, that you are under suspicion. The priests have been seen conferring in dark corners, and the city's rumor mill is in overdrive. Every little story you've heard over the years is now being retold with you at the center. She looked troubled last week. I heard she fainted during prayers. The servant swears she saw a strange man near the garden. Inside the house, the atmosphere is electric. Your sisters are nervous, the priest stern. You try to keep your composure, but every glance feels like an accusation. You remember all the stories of other Vestals who have faced suspicion, some exonerated, some condemned, all forever changed. In the worst moments, you begin to doubt yourself. Is there something you missed? Some innocent moment that looked wrong to the wrong eyes? You remind yourself, over and over, that you have kept your vows, done your duty, never faltered. But the weight of the city's suspicion is crushing. Even innocence is not always a shield in Rome. Through it all, you cling to small sources of strength. The comfort of routine, the quiet support of one or two trusted sisters, the memory of your family's pride. The sacred fire becomes more than a duty. It is your anchor, a symbol of hope that perhaps if you can keep it burning, you can outlast the storm. But you know now, with a clarity that chills your bones, that suspicion is the real enemy. It moves quietly, infecting every relationship, every ritual, every thought, and once it takes hold, there is almost nothing you can do to drive it away. Still, you persevere. You tend the fire, recite the prayers, keep your head high in the processions. You remind yourself that every Vestal before you has faced this test, and some have survived. You are determined to be one of them, to prove that one girl's purity can stand against the darkest fears of an entire city. But as you close your eyes each night, you cannot help but wonder, will tomorrow bring vindication, or the first step on a path that leads to ruin? Suspicion is poison, but accusation is a storm. Once the city senses impurity, the machinery of secret investigation grinds into motion. Often long before you hear the first official question, you begin to notice subtle changes. The priests move differently through the house, always just behind you, always with a reason for their presence. Your daily duties are suddenly watched not by one or two, but by an entire silent retinue. At first you try to tell yourself it's nothing, but the evidence grows with every passing day. Rome is not a city that waits patiently. When there's a hint of scandal around a Vestal, rumors run ahead of facts like wolves before a storm. Suddenly, everywhere you turn there are watchful eyes, whispered conversations, quick glances exchanged behind your back. You feel as if the walls themselves are listening. And in a way, they are. The house is full of servants, many loyal, some merely opportunistic. If a priest asks a kitchen girl, "Did the Vestal seem troubled at supper?" she'll answer with whatever will best preserve her own position. The old porter at the gate is asked if anyone unusual has visited. The slave sweeping the hall is questioned about which Vestal stayed up late, or who seemed lost in thought. Everyone is both witness and suspect. You find yourself constantly retracing your steps, reviewing every word and gesture, wondering if something innocent could have been misunderstood. Did you really spend that extra hour in prayer last week? Or did it only look that way because you were avoiding an argument? Was the smile you gave your younger sister seen as comfort, or as a secret signal? Was your stumble during the festival procession just a misstep, or the first sign of guilt? The priests, meanwhile, are methodical. There is no sudden confrontation, no grand, dramatic accusation. Instead, they begin with private interrogations, quietly summoning you and your sisters, sometimes one by one, sometimes in pairs. You are asked the same questions over and over. Where were you at this hour? Who saw you in the garden? Why did you seem upset after the evening ritual? The tone is polite, even gentle, but the repetition is its own kind of torture. You feel your mind turning circles, searching for ways to be more convincing, more precise, more trustworthy. You know deep down that innocence is never enough. If they want a confession, they will find a way to get one, or twist whatever you say to fit their suspicion. Worse still, there are informants. Rome is a city built on secrets, and the priests know how to find people who will trade small bits of information for favor or gold. Servants who once smiled at you in the kitchen now watch you with unreadable faces. One afternoon, as you pass through the corridor to the sacred fire, you overhear a priest quietly questioning your closest friend. Did she ever speak of longing for home? Has she seemed distant, unhappy? The feeling is worse than any punishment. A cold, isolating certainty that you are no longer surrounded by friends, but by a gallery of potential accusers. Sometimes you think you can see the priest's minds working, trying to construct a case from the tiniest details: a broken vessel, an unopened letter, a second portion of bread at supper. Each becomes a potential clue in the search for guilt. If your sisters defend you, their loyalty itself becomes suspicious. Why are they so eager to shield you? If they say nothing, the silence speaks volumes. You do your best to remain calm, but it's almost impossible. Anxiety sharpens every sense. You become convinced that every shadow hides a spy, that every word could be overheard. At night, you lie awake, listening to footsteps in the corridor, wondering if this will be the night the priests come to your door with their quiet, measured voices. Please come with us. There are some questions you must answer. You startle awake from dreams in which the sacred fire gutters and dies, in which your sisters turn away, in which your name is shouted through the streets as a warning. Still, you must keep up appearances. The daily routines go on: prayer at the altar, offerings at the hearth, processions through the temple halls. You move with careful dignity, aware that every gesture is being recorded by someone's watchful eyes. The city expects the accused Vestal to act above suspicion, and the more you strive for normalcy, the more unnatural it feels. Even the simplest kindness becomes dangerous. If you comfort a crying sister, you wonder if someone will say you are plotting together. If you offer to help with another's duties, perhaps you are trying to buy loyalty. The investigation isn't just personal, it becomes political. The chief priests and the Pontifex Maximus debate in private about what's at stake. Is the city truly in danger, or is this just the latest in a long string of baseless panics? Sometimes you sense their reluctance to escalate things, especially if your family is powerful, or if a public scandal would embarrass Rome at a sensitive moment. Other times, politics demand a sacrifice. If the people are restless, if the omens have been bad, if the city needs to blame someone for plague or defeat, a single girl's fate becomes the key to Rome's peace of mind. When the priests feel they have enough evidence, they begin to share their findings with the Senate and other leading citizens. Now the city's rumor mill erupts into a wildfire. Your name is spoken everywhere, in every shop and market and bathhouse. Strangers watch your procession through the streets with greedy curiosity, waiting for a sign, any sign that the scandal is true. Within the house, the mood grows frantic. Your sisters are torn between fear for themselves and loyalty to you. Some become distant, afraid that your disgrace will taint them. Others grow fiercely protective, whispering words of encouragement behind closed doors. You feel a terrible guilt, knowing that the longer the investigation drags on, the greater the risk for everyone. In Rome, guilt can be collective. You notice changes in the daily routines. The food is plain and sparse, privileges are revoked. No letters from home, no walks in the garden, no participation in festivals. The priests hope to isolate you, to see if your resolve breaks, or if a confession can be coaxed out by loneliness and fear. You become a shadow in your own house, moving quietly from duty to duty, speaking only when spoken to. The walls seem to close in, the sky itself growing narrower with each passing day. There are moments when you want to shout your innocence to the heavens, to gather the people and plead your case, but you know this would only make things worse. In Rome, the louder you protest, the more guilty you seem, so you retreat into silence, conserving your strength, whispering desperate prayers to the goddess whose favor you're supposed to embody. You ask for protection, for justice, for just one friendly face to remind you that you are not alone. Even when you're not being questioned, you feel the investigation pressing in. Small privileges are taken away without explanation. The other Vestals are assigned extra prayers, as if the city hopes collective piety can restore what has been lost. Rituals are repeated, offerings redoubled. The priests act as if they can strong-arm the gods into revealing the truth, or at least into forgiving whatever it is the city believes has gone wrong. Finally, the time comes when the evidence, real or imagined, must be weighed. The chief priests gather in solemn council, reviewing every scrap of rumor, every witness statement, every trivial detail that might be bent towards suspicion. You are not invited to defend yourself. Your fate is debated in whispers, behind closed doors. At some point, the decision is made. The city will proceed to a public accusation, the trial before the people. You feel a strange kind of relief. The waiting is over, and at least now, everything will be out in the open. But you also feel a dread deeper than anything you have ever known. Rome is not kind to the accused, especially when the accusation is impurity. You know the old stories of girls buried alive, of families ruined, of years of loyal service erased in a single moment. You try to remind yourself that innocence has saved Vestals before, but the odds never feel good. In the days before the public trial, the city buzzes with anticipation. Crowds gather at the forum, eager for a glimpse of the scandal. The Senate prepares its questions. The priests rehearse their speeches. Your family comes to visit, silent and grim, their faces pale with worry. Your mother presses your hands in hers, whispering words of love and fear. Your father stands rigid and stoic, unable to look you in the eye. Your sisters watch from the shadows. Some weep for you, others pray in silence. A few keep their distance, hoping to preserve their own safety. In this moment, you realize how completely your fate has been taken out of your hands. You are no longer a girl, or even a priestess. You are a symbol, a scapegoat, a sacrifice to the city's need for reassurance. On the eve of your trial, you stand alone in the house, watching the sacred fire flicker and dance. You think of everything you have given up, your family, your freedom, your childhood, and wonder if it will all be for nothing. Still, you make your offerings, whisper your prayers, and wait for the dawn, knowing that soon everything will be decided. When morning comes, you dress in the plain white robe of the accused, no longer adorned with the symbols of the goddess. You walk through the silent corridors, your footsteps echoing off the marble walls. Outside, the city is awake and waiting. The priests lead you to the forum, where the people gather in their thousands, hungry for a verdict. The sun is high and pitiless, casting long shadows across the stones. You know that, for the next few days, every aspect of your life will be on display, every secret exposed, every rumor aired before the city. You steel yourself, knowing that no matter what happens, you have kept your vows as best you could. The rest, now, is in the hands of the gods and the fickle, fearful judgment of Rome. The forum is alive with rumor and anticipation. The word has spread. An accused Vestal Virgin will stand before the people, and the fate of Rome may hang in the balance. No gladiator contest, no visiting monarch, no Senate debate could hope to draw a larger or more anxious crowd. As you are led from the house of the Vestals by a procession of priests, city guards, and your pale, silent sisters, you can hear the swell of voices ahead, the whispers, the cries, the nervous laughter that always precedes a public reckoning. You walk with your head held high, the plain white robe feeling heavier than any ceremonial garb. The streets are lined with people. Some make the sign against evil, others glare in silent accusation. You catch flashes of sympathy and even a few tears, but it's the hard, glittering curiosity in most faces that you'll remember longest. These are your neighbors, your fellow Romans, the people whose fortunes are supposedly tied to your own, and now they are here to judge. At the forum center stands the tribunal, draped in the deep purple and gold that marks it as the seat of Rome's highest authority. The Pontifex Maximus sits at its heart, surrounded by senior priests, senators, and magistrates. There are no soft edges here, no secret discussions. Everything will play out in the open. The city wants justice, but more than that, it wants reassurance. If the gods are angry, the people need someone to blame. If disaster is looming, a sacrifice might buy time. You stand on the bare stone, exposed to the sun and to the scrutiny of thousands. There are no parents at your side, no sisters to shield you, only the stark authority of the state. The silence before the trial is thunderous. Every cough, every shuffle, every whispered prayer amplified in your mind. For a moment, you almost believe that the gods themselves are watching, their judgment as present as that of the mortal crowd. The pontifex rises, and with deliberate gravity, lays out the accusations. His voice is calm but cold. The sacred fire burned low. Your conduct has been suspect. There have been whispers of forbidden meetings, of sleepless nights, of strange gifts found in your cell. Each point is laid out for all to hear, a public unraveling of your carefully constructed life. You are not allowed to speak at first. Your story will come later. For now, you are the silent vessel into which all the city's fear and anger can be poured. Witnesses are called servants, who recall your restlessness, priests who observed your distracted prayers, neighbors who claim to have seen you in the garden after dark. Each testimony is threaded with doubt. A dropped cup becomes a sign of guilt. A lost letter is suddenly evidence of conspiracy. You listen as your own life is twisted into a cautionary tale, your every action and omission recast as proof of corruption. It is excruciating, but not unfamiliar. You have heard these stories before, in whispers about past Vestals who stood where you now stand. The pattern never changes. When the city needs reassurance, a scapegoat is chosen. You wonder if those other girls stood as tall as you, if they felt the same burning mix of terror and pride. Eventually, it is your turn to answer. You are given the chance to speak, to defend your purity, to assert your innocence. The words are slow and measured, your voice echoing across the stone. You speak of your devotion to Vesta, of your careful observance of every ritual, of your loyalty to the city. You look not at the priests but at the crowd, searching for a glimmer of understanding. You want them to see the person behind the accusation, to remember that you are not a legend or a symbol, but a girl who has done her best to serve. For a moment, the forum is quiet. Some in the crowd look uncertain, troubled by your composure. Others grow restless, eager for a resolution. The magistrates whisper among themselves. The pontifex asks you one final question, a simple one, but heavy with meaning. Do you swear, before the gods and the people, that you have kept your vows? You meet his gaze and answer with all the strength you have left. I swear. Your answer is met with silence. Now the decision is out of your hands. The priests retire to confer. The senators debate. The crowd murmurs in uneasy anticipation. The wait is long, hours stretching like days. The sun slowly sinking as you stand on the stone, refusing to let your knees tremble. While the tribunal deliberates, the crowd erupts into debate. Arguments break out between those who believe in your innocence and those convinced of your guilt. Old women recount stories of omens and disasters. Children are warned to watch the Vestals, for their fates might one day depend on such purity. It feels less like a trial and more like a referendum on the city's fortune, as if the outcome will decide not just your fate, but the fate of Rome itself. At last, the priests return, their faces unreadable. The pontifex steps forward, his voice carrying over the restless crowd. The verdict is announced. Either you are acquitted, the omens declared favourable, and your service, however briefly interrupted, can continue, or you are condemned, your vow found wanting, and the full weight of Rome's ritual punishment will fall on your shoulders. If you are acquitted, relief sweeps the forum. The crowd cheers, tears flow, and the city celebrates a narrow escape from disaster. You are led back to the house of the Vestals, where your sisters embrace you, their joy tinged with exhaustion and fear for what might come next. For days afterward, the city is awash in gratitude, offerings left at the temple, prayers whispered in your name, your family's honor restored. You carry on, forever changed by the ordeal, knowing that suspicion can return at any moment. But if you are condemned, the silence is suffocating. No one cheers. The priests solemnly pronounce the rituals that must follow. Your family disappears from the forum, shunned and disgraced. Your sisters withdraw, unable to look you in the eye. The sentence is as old as Rome itself, a punishment designed not just for you, but for the whole city. The crowd does not riot or protest. Instead, they watch with somber resignation, convinced that your sacrifice is the only way to restore order. You are led away, surrounded by guards and priests. The path from the forum to the place of punishment is quiet, lined with citizens who bow their heads or avert their eyes. Some weep for you, others mutter prayers, hoping your sacrifice will appease the gods. The city's need for reassurance outweighs any sense of mercy. Even as you walk, you feel the weight of history pressing on your shoulders. You think of all the Vestals who have stood in your place, of all the girls who lived and died as symbols of Rome's deepest fears and hopes. You wonder if in your final moments the gods will grant you peace, or if your name will simply become another warning, another lesson whispered to future generations. Either way, the trial is not just a judgment of one girl, it is a ritual in itself, an act of collective purification, a city's way of coping with the darkness that lies just beyond the reach of its laws and prayers. You have played your part for good or ill, and the city will move on, wiser, sadder, forever changed. You walk into whatever comes next, head held high, the memory of the forum's roar echoing in your ears. If the tribunal finds you guilty, there is no delay. The moment the sentence is declared, the rituals of guilt begin, ancient and inflexible, designed to separate the impure from the city before the gods' anger can burn Rome itself. Even if you are innocent, the machinery of tradition moves forward. No one dares question the outcome, for fear that any protest might draw divine wrath upon everyone. The priests' voices are measured and emotionless as they pronounce the sentence. The Vestal Virgin found guilty of breaking her vow must die, not by ordinary execution, but by a punishment reserved for the sacred. A public execution would itself offend the gods. Shedding the blood of a Vestal is taboo, a final insult to the goddess Vesta, so the punishment is carefully ritualized, blending law and superstition, fear and piety. You are led, under guard, back to the house of the Vestals for one last night. The mood inside is funereal. Your sisters keep to their rooms, some quietly weeping, others in silent prayer. The servants scuttle in the corridors, avoiding your gaze. The Virgo Maxima comes to you, as is custom, and sits with you in the dim light, neither of you speaking much. She is the only one allowed to offer comfort, a soft word, a touch on the shoulder, a whispered prayer to Vesta for mercy on your soul. At dawn, Rome wakes to ritual. The city's highest officials gather, the Pontifex Maximus, senators, and magistrates. A procession forms to carry out the sentence, moving through the silent streets. The people watch, heads bowed, offering no shouts or protests, only the silent recognition that something sacred and deeply unsettling is happening. You are dressed in a simple white robe, with a veil covering your head. You walk barefoot through the city, surrounded by guards and priests, the crowd pressed close but eerily silent. There is no cheering, no anger, only the heavy sense that all of Rome is holding its breath. The streets you walked as a symbol of hope now become your final path. Your family is not allowed to see you. In this moment you are no longer daughter, sister or friend, but an offering, a necessary sacrifice. If you glance up you might see familiar faces, your mother or father among the onlookers, faces streaked with tears, held back by the rules of ritual and the unbreakable boundaries of tradition. The destination is a small, underground chamber just outside the city walls, a place set aside for this sole purpose. The entrance is a narrow stair cut into the earth, leading to a silent torchlit space. Inside waits a simple bed, a lamp, a loaf of bread, a little water and milk, a small flask of oil. These are not gifts of mercy, but tokens of Rome's anxiety. The city cannot execute a Vestal outright, so it provides a pretense of care, leaving you technically alive, though everyone knows the outcome. The ritual continues above ground. The Pontifex Maximus leads prayers to Vesta, asking the goddess to forgive the city and accept the sacrifice. The people participate, murmuring along, offering flowers and incense at the temple. The priests speak words of expiation, as if trying to wipe away the stain of guilt not only from you, but from Rome itself. Every word, every gesture, is heavy with both relief and regret. Then comes the final moment. You descend the steps alone, the opening sealed behind you with heavy earth and stone. Above, the city breathes again, convinced for now that order has been restored, the gods pacified, the future secured. Below, in the darkness, you are left with only your thoughts, your prayers, and the knowledge that your fate has become part of Rome's myth. For the crowd, the ritual is both horror and reassurance. Mothers hug their children tighter, senators mutter about omens, Ordinary Romans go home, convinced that the city's crisis has been solved, at least for now. For your sisters in the house of the Vestals, there is grief, but also a kind of numb relief, the knowledge that the city's anger has passed over them. For now, yet the story is not quite over. The rituals of guilt do not end with burial. The city must also purify itself. For days, priests perform rites meant to cleanse Rome of bad luck and divine wrath. Livestock are sacrificed, temples cleaned, processions held. The Senate issues public proclamations, declaring that Rome's contract with the gods is renewed, but the threat to the city's future has passed. It's a massive, carefully orchestrated performance, designed to convince everyone, from the humblest street vendor to the most powerful senator, that the city is once again safe. But the emotional toll is enormous. Your family is ruined, their name dragged through the dirt, they lose status, friends, property. Sometimes they are driven into exile or poverty. The shadow of disgrace follows them for generations. Even those who defended you are tainted by association. In the marketplace, your story is retold, with each retelling making you more monstrous, more tragic, or more innocent, depending on the teller's mood. In the house of the Vestals, daily life resumes, but nothing is ever quite the same. The sisters speak in hushed tones, haunted by the empty bed and the rituals they perform together. New rules are added, new suspicions sown. Every act, every glance is weighed even more carefully. The fear of being the next scapegoat is real. Outside, the city remains uneasy. Every little misfortune, a sudden storm, a fire, a failed crop, is weighed against the recent sacrifice. Was it enough? Did the gods accept it? Or did they want more? Some believe that the burial has saved Rome. Others whisper that the goddess will not be appeased, that the city is doomed to repeat its mistakes. And always, the rituals persist. The punishment of a Vestal is not simply a solution to a problem. It is an act of collective memory. The city will remember this day, mark it in its stories and prayers, and use it as a warning for the future. For generations to come, parents will remind their daughters of the price of disobedience, and priests will point to your fate as proof of the seriousness of Rome's contract with the divine. If by chance the gods do smile on the city after your death, if a harvest is saved, if a battle is won, your name will be spoken as the girl who bought Rome's future with her own. But if misfortune continues, you will be blamed in absentia, your memory becoming a ghost that haunts every dark corner, every uneasy dream. Meanwhile, the rituals that followed your sentence serve a double purpose. They protect the city from fear and guilt, and they reinforce the invisible web of power and belief that keeps Rome together. Even as the priests assure the people that all is well, everyone knows the truth. The fate of Rome remains, as ever, precarious, balanced on the slender shoulders of the next girl chosen for the sacred flame. For you, there is only silence, darkness, and the knowledge that your story is now part of the eternal city's haunted past. No one in Rome escapes the aftershocks of a Vestal's condemnation. When a Vestal Virgin is found guilty, her family's world collapses overnight. The city that once envied their honor now recoils in disgust, as if impurity were a contagious disease. Once the burial is over, the city's public face resumes. Markets open, senators debate, and the priests perform their rounds. But beneath the surface, the wound festers, and the effects ripple outward for years. For your family, disgrace is not just an emotion, it is a daily reality. Your father, who once held his head high among his peers, now keeps his eyes lowered, shoulders hunched beneath the weight of invisible blame. He finds former friends looking away or crossing the street to avoid him. Opportunities for public office evaporate. If he served as a magistrate or senator, he is quietly removed from his post. In some cases, he may even be forced to leave the city, carrying his shame with him to some distant villa, or worse, to the outskirts of the empire. Your mother, whose greatest pride was once your selection as a Vestal, now faces whispers wherever she goes. In the market, women gather their children as she passes, muttering prayers under their breath. Some pity her, others see her as the source of all that went wrong. The pain is sharpened by the memory of better days, of the feasts, the parades, the pride she felt when people bowed to her daughter. Now her name is a warning, a cautionary tale, proof that even the highest honor can turn to ruin. Siblings, too, pay the price. Your brothers find doors closed, their futures suddenly uncertain, potential marriages are called off, business partners back away. If they are old enough to serve in the army or hold office, they are quietly passed over for promotions. The stain lingers, a shadow over every attempt to build a life or restore the family name. Younger sisters become objects of suspicion, their marriages delayed or cancelled, as parents fear a curse has fallen upon the bloodline. For your extended family, cousins, uncles, aunts, the effect is less immediate, but still real. Everyone becomes more cautious, aware that any association with your disgrace could jeopardize their own fortunes. Some distance themselves publicly, hoping to avoid the splash of shame. Others close ranks, offering quiet support, but knowing that their gestures might only bring more scrutiny. Meanwhile, your friends, those you grew up with, those who once envied your status, become strangers. A few may send secret notes of condolence, but most vanish, their families forbidding further contact. The city has no room for divided loyalties. The price of being close to a disgraced Vestal is too high, the risk too great. In a society where reputation is everything, even the faintest connection to scandal is dangerous. Inside the house of the Vestals, life resumes, but a chill hangs over every ritual. The empty bed is a constant reminder of what has happened. New routines are established, stricter than before. Extra prayers are added to the daily schedule, and every act of piety is doubled, as if the remaining sisters can somehow erase what has been done. The Virgo Maxima, who once led with gentle authority, becomes more severe, her tone sharper, her gaze more searching. She knows that another scandal would be the end of them all. The sisters feel the loss acutely, their camaraderie tinged with fear. Whispers about the condemned girl never fade. Every mishap or misstep is measured against her memory. Remember what happened to her becomes a refrain, part warning, part plea for vigilance. Some Vestals become more insular, trusting no one. Others reach out to the youngest, trying to offer reassurance even as they battle their own anxiety. Outside the temple, the city moves through stages of reaction. First relief, then uncertainty, then a strange kind of paranoia. For months, even years, any calamity, a house fire, a failed harvest, a military defeat, will be linked back to your case. Was the sacrifice enough? Was the right person punished? Or does the goddess still demand more? Priests debate these questions in public. Private citizens worry in silence. There are those who argue, quietly, that the system is flawed, that perhaps too much is asked of a handful of girls, that Rome's future shouldn't depend on something so fragile. But such talk is dangerous, and most keep their doubts to themselves. If in the months after your burial, good fortune returns, if the crops flourish, if Rome's armies are victorious, then your family's disgrace becomes a little lighter, your story recast as a necessary, if tragic, act of civic duty. People might even remember you with a kind of melancholy respect. She gave her life for Rome, but if misfortune continues, the whispers grow sharper, the blame heavier. Your family may be driven to poverty, your name cursed, your memory twisted into whatever story the city needs. Even the city's rituals change. At every major festival, extra prayers are offered for the purity of the Vestals. New rules are proposed, meant to prevent another tragedy. The house of the Vestals is inspected more often. The sisters are watched more closely. Some propose that the selection process should be stricter, the punishments harsher, the training more severe. Fear becomes its own ritual, woven into the fabric of daily life. In the political sphere, rivals seize the moment. A senator whose family once envied your father might now use the scandal to advance his own ambitions. Priests, eager to show their loyalty, may compete to propose new rites or stricter oversight. Even the emperor, if he is wise, uses the moment to remind the people of the cost of impiety and of the necessity of faith, discipline, and unquestioning obedience. For your family, there is only slow adjustment, an endless series of small humiliations. Some leave Rome altogether, seeking new beginnings, far from the city's unforgiving gaze. Others cling stubbornly to what little they have left, determined to prove their innocence through years of honest living. But the city remembers. Your name is entered into the records, your fate retold at every gathering, your story woven into the cautionary tales told to every young girl chosen for the temple. Within the house, there is always the risk that grief will curdle into suspicion. Sisters keep their own counsel, wary of saying too much. Some become hyper-vigilant, reporting every small breach to the priests, hoping to demonstrate their own purity. Others grow quietly rebellious, questioning the system, the rituals, even the goddess herself, but only in the safety of whispered midnight conversations, and never for long. The fear of sharing your fate is too great. Over time, as new Vestals are chosen and the memory of your case fades, the house resumes a kind of uneasy normalcy. But the lessons remain. No one forgets how quickly honor can turn to ruin, how one girl's downfall can destroy a family, and how the city's fortune is always, in the end, a fragile thing, balanced on the choices and reputations of its most vulnerable. The rituals go on. The sacred fire is tended, prayers are whispered, processions wind through the temple courts. But for those who remember, the question never really goes away. How can any family, any girl, bear so much responsibility? And how long until the city's fear turns its gaze elsewhere, hungry for another scapegoat to secure its uncertain future? You are gone, but the shadow you cast lingers on your family, your sisters, and the city that believed one girl's purity could decide its fate. It is a citywide panic that unfolds, not just in the Senate or in the dim halls of the priesthood, but in every cramped apartment, every smoky tavern, every market stall from the Palatine's gold-adorned heights to the grimy edge of the Subura. With the execution of a Vestal, Rome itself seems to vibrate with collective anxiety, waiting for a sign, any sign, that the sacrifice has worked, that the gods have been appeased. But Rome is never quiet for long, and any hint of disaster is now interpreted through the lens of your fate. The omens come thick and fast. A sudden thunderstorm cracks the sky 2 days after your burial. A merchant's warehouse burns to the ground. A child falls sick. The Tiber floods its banks. Each incident is small by itself, but woven together they form a tapestry of dread. Old women gather at the city's fountains, muttering that Vesta's anger lingers. Priests redouble their offerings at every altar, leading processions with extra solemnity. But you can feel the city's heartbeat accelerate. The crowd at the forum swells each evening as people gather to exchange rumors, to question the augurs, to demand reassurance that the darkness is not permanent. No one is immune to the fear. The rich lock their doors and double their household offerings, sending expensive gifts to the temple in hopes of turning aside the goddess's wrath. The poor pool their coins for a communal sacrifice, a lamb, a clutch of doves, anything to show the gods they are innocent. Even the city's criminals grow nervous. Thieves pause before robbing a wealthy house, pausing to whisper a prayer for forgiveness. Gladiators leave offerings of laurel or oil in the shadow of Vesta's shrine, superstitiously convinced that her anger could doom a fight, a career, a life. Meanwhile, the blame game begins. People remember every bad omen from the past year and connect it to your case. It started with her. Didn't you notice the fire last summer? Remember when the sacred geese wouldn't eat? I told you something was wrong in the temple. The city's misfortunes are recast as consequences of a single girl's impurity, as if you had poisoned the air, soured the earth, and summoned the storm clouds with your fall. In every household, mothers warn their daughters about the dangers of pride, temptation, and disobedience. Using your name as a cautionary tale, you have become the city's most potent ghost. Politicians are quick to seize the moment. A senator rises in the Curia demanding an official inquiry. Were all the rituals performed correctly? Is there another Vestal hiding guilt? Should the priesthood be purged? The rules tightened. Others argue for leniency, suggesting that perhaps Rome is too quick to demand scapegoats. But these are dangerous words, rarely spoken above a whisper. The Senate prefers certainty, and certainty means finding a cause for every disaster. Priests too feel the pressure. The Pontifex Maximus must reassure the city, yet every new disaster chips away at his authority. The sacred fire, tended with redoubled vigilance, becomes a daily thermometer for the city's mood. If it flickers or dims, panic surges. If it blazes high, people breathe easier. Any mishap in ritual is scrutinized, gossiped about, and sometimes unfairly blamed on the lingering impurity left behind by your condemnation. Religious specialists, augurs, and haruspices. Those priests who read the future in the entrails of sacrificed animals are called in to interpret every tremor and eclipse. They become both celebrities and scapegoats themselves, for Rome demands answers, and answers are hard to find. A flock of birds behaving strangely can trigger citywide fasting. A dream reported by a senator's wife may lead to new sacrifices, new restrictions on the Vestals, and new debates in the Senate. In the neighborhoods, everyday people cope as best they can. Some take comfort in the rituals, the familiar words and gestures providing a sense of order. Others grow restless, even angry. Riots have erupted before over perceived impiety or failed rituals. If panic continues, it will not be long before someone points a finger at another target. A priest, a magistrate, a rival temple. You can feel the tension building, like a storm gathering over the rooftops of Rome. The family of the condemned Vestal suffers a special torment. Every new disaster, every whispered omen, is a knife to the heart. They have lost their daughter, their status, their hopes for the future, and now they are the focus of every rumor and complaint. Sometimes stones are thrown at their door. Old friends cross the street to avoid them. If things do not improve soon, they may flee the city altogether, leaving behind the ruins of what was once a proud name. As weeks turn to months, the city's mood ebbs and flows with each piece of news. Sometimes good fortune returns, a bountiful harvest, a small military victory, the recovery of a senator's sick child, and the city relaxes, convinced that the gods are finally pacified. Offerings are made in gratitude, and the memory of the condemned Vestal softens a little. Her name might even be spoken with pity, as someone whose sacrifice saved Rome, but it never takes much to reignite panic. A sudden lightning strike, a fire in a distant district, or a diplomatic setback brings all the old fears rushing back. In these moments, the story of the fallen Vestal is retold with new details and new accusations. Each telling grows more dramatic, more laden with supernatural horror. The night she was buried, the moon turned red. A dog howled outside the temple as the last stone was set. These legends spread from tavern to tavern, from the mouths of children to the ears of senators. The line between history and myth blurs, and your fate becomes a touchstone for all that is uncertain in Rome. But the trauma lingers. Rome has learned once again how fragile its fortune is, how easily one girl's fate can plunge an entire city into chaos. The rituals persist, but beneath the surface everyone knows the contract with the gods is brittle, the line between order and disaster is razor thin. In quieter moments, some citizens wonder if the price is too high, if perhaps the gods demand too much, or if Rome asks too much of its chosen daughters. But these questions for now remain unspoken, carried like a secret in the hearts of those who have seen the city tremble and survive. And so Rome carries on, wiser, warier, haunted by the memory of a sacrifice that for a time put the entire city on edge. Even as Rome trembles under the weight of omens and blame, the human need for mercy refuses to be snuffed out. For every citizen eager to see a scapegoat punished, there are others who whisper that justice was not truly served, or that perhaps the gods or fate or even Rome itself have been too harsh. When a Vestal is condemned, there are always attempts, some public, most private, to save her life, to question the judgment, or at the very least to offer her a shred of dignity before the end. The law is inflexible, but mercy is persistent. In the days between accusation and burial, the city's most powerful voices sometimes intercede. The Pontifex Maximus himself, responsible for overseeing both the accusation and the ritual, may harbour doubts, especially if the evidence is thin or the political climate uncertain. It is not unknown for the chief priest to delay proceedings under the pretense of further investigation, hoping that a more favourable omen or a burst of public sympathy might justify leniency. Sometimes he quietly encourages the family to plead for clemency before the Senate, though such petitions are rarely granted. You, the accused Vestal, are not completely abandoned. Even as the city turns its back, your family may try everything in their power to save you. Your father may visit senators, beg influential patrons, or spend his wealth on gifts to the priesthood, seeking any leverage that might spare your life. Your mother's grief is quieter but no less fierce. She gathers old friends and calls in every favour, hoping to stir compassion among those who once celebrated your selection. Other, less visible efforts are made. The matronae, the noble women of Rome, have a long tradition of supporting the Vestals, who, after all, represent the highest ideal of Roman womanhood. It is not unheard of for a group of prominent women to appear in the forum, veiled and weeping, pleading for mercy on behalf of the accused. Sometimes these interventions sway public opinion, making it difficult for the priests or the Senate to proceed without backlash. On rare occasions, such protests have brought the accused a second hearing or a private audience with the pontifex, allowing her to plead her case in her own words. The Vestal's own sisters can also play a role. If the other 5 join together, they can sometimes persuade the authorities to reconsider, especially if they vouch for the accused's character and devotion. This is risky, of course. Defending a suspected Vestal can draw suspicion upon the defenders, so most are careful to balance their loyalty with self-preservation. Still, the House of the Vestals has its own secret bonds, and even in times of fear, compassion can win out. Sometimes the accused herself becomes her own best advocate. During her brief audience with the priests, she may present her case with such clarity, dignity, and conviction that doubts are sown among her judges. There are legendary cases in Rome's history where a Vestal, accused in the midst of citywide panic, so powerfully declared her innocence that the people demanded her release. Such moments are rare, but when they happen, they are remembered for generations as proof that even in a system built for scapegoats, a single voice can sometimes break the silence. The most dramatic struggles for mercy, however, are not always successful. The machinery of accusation, once set in motion, is hard to stop. Sometimes the city's mood is simply too anxious, the omens too dire, the pressure from the Senate or the priesthood too strong. In these cases, even the most impassioned pleas fall on deaf ears, and the rituals move forward with grim inevitability. Yet, even in defeat, the struggle for mercy leaves its mark. When a Vestal is executed despite public protest, her story takes on a new resonance. She becomes not just a warning but a martyr, a figure who embodies both the cruelty and the conscience of Rome. Songs are composed, secret altars are raised, and her name becomes a symbol for those who believe that the city's laws can sometimes go too far. After the burial, the question of innocence lingers. Friends and supporters continue to argue her case long after her death, comparing the details of her trial, recounting her final words, and scrutinizing the omens for signs that the gods were dissatisfied. A sudden disaster, an earthquake, a defeat in battle, a plague, may be taken as proof that Rome punished the wrong girl. Or, if good fortune follows, the city may try to forget the whole affair, letting the story fade into uneasy silence. The struggle for mercy is often joined by the Pontifex Maximus himself. Sometimes, he is torn between his duty to Rome and his own doubts about the case. On at least one famous occasion, the Pontifex is said to have fasted for 3 days, praying for a sign that would justify a pardon. When no sign came, he wept openly at the burial, and the city remembered his tears as a warning that justice and piety are not always the same. There are also stories, half believed, half feared, of last-minute miracles. In one legend, a Vestal condemned to death was saved when the sacred fire blazed up of its own accord, interpreted as a sign of the goddess's forgiveness. In another, a storm broke as the burial was about to begin, forcing the priests to abandon the ritual and allowing the accused to live. Such tales are rare, but they reflect a longing in the Roman soul for the intervention of fate, the possibility that mercy can triumph even in the darkest hour. But most of the time, the struggle ends quietly. The family's appeals are dismissed, the public protests die away, and the condemned Vestal is led to her fate. If she has defenders, they continue to honor her memory, keeping alive the hope that her story will one day be vindicated. In private, friends gather to pray for her soul, lighting small lamps in her honor, whispering her name in defiance of the city's official verdict. For the city, these efforts at mercy create a complicated legacy. On the one hand, the willingness to intercede for a condemned Vestal becomes a sign of compassion, a reminder that Rome is not entirely ruled by fear and superstition. On the other hand, every act of mercy is a challenge to the authority of the priests and the power of the law. Too much mercy and the system risks collapse. Too little and the city becomes a place of unending dread. The most lasting effect of these struggles is the lesson they leave for future generations. daughters are told the stories not just of those who were condemned, but of those who fought for their innocence. Families who once turned away in fear later remember the mothers who wept in the forum, the friends who stood by in defiance of the crowd. In this way, the tragedy is softened, the pain shared, and the city, at least for a while, reminded of its capacity for grace. Mercy may not always win, but it never disappears. It remains a small, stubborn flame flickering in the hearts of families, in the prayers of sisters, and in the conscience of the city itself. It is this flame that, more than any law or ritual, keeps alive the hope that Rome can be not just powerful, but just. And so, even as the rituals of accusation and execution grind on, there is always someone somewhere whispering a prayer for innocence, pleading for compassion, and waiting for a sign that the gods, or the people, or fate itself might still be moved. The day of the burial arrives with a heaviness that seems to soak into the very stones of the city. Rome, for all its clamour and splendour, grows subdued. Merchants still open their stalls, but voices are hushed, and the usual haggling sounds forced. Even the street dogs seem to sense that something dire is about to unfold. As you, the condemned Vestal, wake to your last morning in the house, the sun rises with reluctant slowness, casting a pale, sickly light over the temple's sacred courtyard. The final descent, Rome's ultimate sentence, is not a chaotic public execution, but a meticulously orchestrated act, equal parts law, ritual, and theatre. From the outside, it seems almost merciful. The city cannot spill sacred blood, so it must instead bury you alive, allowing the gods to judge in the prophecy of earth and stone. In practice, it is a sentence that chills the soul, a quiet horror that echoes through every vegetation of Vestals. There is no breakfast on this morning, no friendly voices or comforting hands. You are washed and dressed in a fresh white robe, veiled from head to toe. Your sisters, faces pale and drawn, stand silently at the threshold of the house. Some avert their eyes, others try to meet your gaze, mouths trembling with unsaid words, apologies, prayers, fragments of memories from a life spent together in ritual and routine. The Virgo Maxima stands closest, her hands trembling as she offers the last blessing, her voice catching as she invokes Vesta's mercy. The Pontifex Maximus arrives with the other high priests, their presence more somber than ever. They conduct a short final prayer, but even the words sound empty. Your family is not permitted to be present. This separation, meant to keep ritual purity, only deepens the sense of abandonment. You have never been so alone. The guards step forward, and with one last look at the temple that has been your world since childhood, you are led out through a private door, never again to return. The walk through Rome is haunting. The route is carefully chosen to avoid major thoroughfares, but news spreads fast. People cluster at street corners and in shadowed doorways. Some cross themselves as you pass. A handful whisper words of comfort, but most are silent, unwilling or unable to look you in the eye. Your feet, bare on the stones, grow numb, but you force yourself to keep moving, head high, back straight. If this is to be the end, let it be met with dignity. At last you reach the edge of the city, to a low, grassy mound just beyond the walls, a place consecrated for the grim purpose of Vestal burial. The earth here has been turned many times, each mound a memory, each stone a warning. The entrance to the chamber is a narrow stone stair descending into darkness. Torches flicker along the walls, but their light does little to dispel the sense of being swallowed by the earth. The priests step forward. The chamber is small, barely larger than a cell. Inside, a narrow bed, a lamp, a loaf of bread, a pitcher of water, a flask of milk, a small jug of oil. These tokens are a fiction of mercy, a pretense that you are not being executed, simply left in the hands of the gods. You kneel in the center as the last rites are performed. The Pontifex recites the final prayers, asking Vesta to accept your sacrifice and spare the city further misfortune. Each word seems to settle like dust in the close air. When the prayer ends, the priests withdraw. The door, a heavy stone slab, is lowered into place. You hear it grind shut, sealing you in darkness. The world shrinks to the circle of lamplight, the stale smell of earth and oil, the slow, unsteady thump of your own heartbeat. For a moment there is silence, as if Rome itself is waiting, listening for some sign that the sacrifice has been accepted. Above ground, the ritual continues. The people gather uneasy and restless as the priests declare that the city is cleansed. The Senate issues a formal decree announcing that the threat has passed, that Rome's contract with the gods is renewed. In the forum, some weep for you, others are grateful, convinced that disaster has been averted. For your family, it is a day of deepest mourning, a loss compounded by the knowledge that they may never visit your grave, may never offer a proper farewell. Underground, the hours stretch out, blending together in a slow, dreamlike procession. You pray, at first reciting every hymn and plea you ever learned. The lamp flickers, the bread and water sit untouched. It is not hunger or thirst that occupies your mind, but memory, moments with your sisters in the garden, the heat of the sacred fire on your face, your mother's hands fixing your veil before your first festival. Every sound is magnified, the drip of water from the ceiling, the distant rumble of the city above, your own breathing growing shallow. Time loses meaning in the darkness. Sleep comes in fits. You dream of sunlight, laughter, freedom. Sometimes you imagine you hear footsteps, a voice at the door, some last-minute pardon. But the only real visitor is silence, heavier and more complete than anything you have ever known. Above you, Rome moves on. The city's fear, for now, is calmed. The festivals resume. The market reopens. Senators return to their debates. The story of your death spreads quickly. Some retell it with horror, some with grim satisfaction. Songs are sung. Rumors are invented. The facts are already slipping into legend. Your sisters perform extra rituals in your memory, each act tinged with both relief and guilt. They know it could just as easily have been any of them. For the people of Rome, the burial is a kind of closure, a visible, comprehensible end to a crisis that had threatened the whole city. For a few days, the city is solemn. Then the old habits return, the anxiety fades, and your story settles into the long memory of Rome as another chapter in the city's uneasy relationship with purity and power. But for those who truly loved you, the wound does not heal. Your family mourns in private, forbidden even the comfort of a proper grave. Your name becomes a forbidden topic in some circles, a rallying cry in others. The house of the Vestals grows quieter, more fearful. Every girl who follows in your footsteps remembers the echo of your final walk, the chill of your silent descent. And for you, in that underground darkness, there is only waiting, whether for the gods' forgiveness, for the city's future, or for a peace that will only come with sleep. As the lamp dims and your thoughts fade into dreams, your last hope is not for rescue, but for remembrance, for someone somewhere to know that you were more than a sacrifice, more than a symbol, more than a name in a city's anxious prayers. Above, the city breathes easier, its destiny bought for another day. Life in Rome, after the burial of a Vestal Virgin, is strangely fractured, the city both eager to move forward and unable to forget. The days that follow are filled with rituals designed to cleanse the collective conscience, but no amount of incense or animal sacrifice can entirely erase what everyone has seen. The city tries, as it always does, to heal itself after the sacrifice of one of its most sacred daughters. In the immediate aftermath, the priests lead elaborate rites of purification. The house of the Vestals is ritually cleansed with smoke, water, and salt. The sisters are required to participate in extra prayers, sometimes for days at a time, as if their own devotion can fill the absence left by the condemned. The sacred fire is watched more closely than ever, its flames now a daily reminder of the city's narrow escape from divine anger. If it burns steadily, Rome believes itself restored. If it so much as flickers, people look over their shoulders, whispering that perhaps the ritual was not enough. The Senate, meanwhile, passes decrees meant to reinforce the sense that order has returned. They declare that the city has been purified, that Rome's contract with the gods is secure once again. Sometimes, special games or feasts are held to mark the end of the crisis, as if public celebration can overwrite the memory of public fear. These events are full of forced laughter and nervous glances, a collective attempt to push away the anxiety that still lingers in the city's bones. For most citizens, the need to move on is both urgent and uneasy. Shopkeepers reopen their stalls, and daily business resumes. Mothers bring their children to the market, pointedly avoiding any talk of the recent scandal. Senators return to their debates, trying to outdo one another in displays of piety and loyalty. The city's storytellers, always quick to find a new subject, begin spinning tales of foreign wars, political intrigues, or miraculous omens, anything to distract from the recent tragedy. Yet the wound is not so easily closed. In the house of the Vestals, life continues under a new shadow. The sisters find themselves glancing often at the empty bed, the silent place in the ritual circle, the vanished face in the garden. New rules and restrictions are imposed, tightening discipline and making the daily routine even more rigid. The Virgo Maxima is more stern, the younger girls more watchful. Trust is fragile. Every mistake feels dangerous. The memory of the burial hovers in every silence, every hurried prayer, every glance exchanged when the priests pass by. For your family, healing is almost impossible. The loss of a daughter is compounded by the loss of honor, of status, of a future they had long imagined. Your parents mourn in private, wary of public displays of grief. Your siblings struggle with shame and with the anger that comes from being punished for something beyond their control. Friends disappear, neighbors turn away, and the family's fortunes, once rising on the fame of your selection, sink into obscurity or even poverty. Among your old friends and the wider community, the story of your fate takes on a strange new life. Some treat it as a cautionary tale, warning their children of the dangers of pride, disobedience, or even just bad luck. Others whisper that the punishment was unjust, that Rome asks too much of its Vestals, that the price of purity is sometimes cruelty. For a while there are quiet debates in corners of the city, philosophers, poets, and even a few senators daring to question the wisdom of a system that can destroy a family so utterly, all for the sake of divine favor. But for most, the urge to forget outweighs the need to question. As the months pass, the city's collective memory shifts. The details of your life blur into legend, your name becoming less a person than a symbol, another chapter in Rome's long history of sacrifice and survival. A few will remember your kindness, your laughter, your devotion to the goddess, but most will recall only the ritual, the punishment, the uneasy relief that came after your burial. Still, there are signs of lingering unease. Priests occasionally add new rituals to the calendar, just in case the city's luck needs reinforcement. At major festivals, extra offerings are made in memory of those who gave all for Rome. The House of the Vestals becomes more isolated, its walls higher, its doors more closely guarded. The selection process for new Vestals is made even more rigorous, as if better screening can prevent future disaster. Yet, healing does happen, slowly and unevenly. In the garden of the house, new flowers bloom each spring. The sisters, though quieter, share secret smiles and stolen moments of joy. There are still stories told, still prayers offered, still the quiet camaraderie of shared fate. In time, a new generation of girls arrives, nervous, awestruck, unaware of the full weight of what has come before. The city, too, finds ways to move forward. Victories are celebrated, new temples are dedicated, children grow into adults who only half remember the old scandals. Some families, including yours, find a way to rebuild. It may take years, sometimes a generation, but the city's memory is ultimately short, and the need for healing strong. Distant relatives welcome you back, or new alliances are formed through marriages and business for the few who cannot forget. There is solace in small acts. A lamp lit on the anniversary of your death, a coin dropped at Vesta's altar, a whispered prayer for peace. Most of all, the healing comes from the passage of time. The fear that once gripped Rome softens into caution, the wound into scar tissue. The rituals remain, but their edge is dulled. The city is never quite the same, but neither is it forever broken. In the end, Rome endures. Not because it forgets its tragedies, but because it learns, however slowly, to live with them. Still, every now and then, a sudden wind will blow through the city, rattling windows and stirring old fears. On those nights, some will remember the story of the Vestal, who was buried beneath the city, whose purity was thought to decide Rome's fate, and for a moment, the city will pause, listening to the echoes of the past, before moving on once more, comforted by the familiar rhythm of prayers, rituals, and hope. You would think that after such tragedy, Rome would learn that the story of a single girl's fall might soften the hearts of those who govern, or at least make the people question how much suffering should be borne for the promise of divine favor. But history moves in circles, and in Rome, old anxieties have a way of becoming new again. In the years that follow your burial, your fate becomes both a lesson and a warning, told and retold, shaping not only the lives of those who come after you, but the very soul of the city itself, the House of the Vestals. Once known for the serenity and dignity of its daughters, is changed forever by the memory of your loss. No matter how often the marble floors are scrubbed, no matter how many flowers bloom in the courtyard, there is an absence, a silence that never truly leaves. The girls who come after you are taught your story from the first day, not just as a warning but as a living memory. Remember her, the Virgo Maxima intones, her voice echoing in the vaulted hall. She served Rome with all her heart. She did nothing but her duty. Still, the city turned against her. Remember and be vigilant. The sisters whisper your name in the garden at twilight, their white veils catching the fading light. For some, you are a ghost who walks the paths after dark, watching, reminding them of the line between honor and ruin. For others, you are a symbol of resistance, a reminder that no amount of obedience can make you safe if the city decides it needs someone to blame. As the years pass, small rituals take root, unofficial, almost secret, meant to honor your memory and ask for protection. On the anniversary of your death, the youngest Vestal leaves a garland at the garden's oldest tree, and the sisters share a quiet meal in your name. Sometimes on stormy nights when the sacred fire crackles louder than usual, they tell your story again, letting each detail remind them that fear is a dangerous ritual all its own. Beyond the house, the city itself slowly folds your fate into its legends. The story is recited by grandmothers at firesides, whispered by lovers in shadowed alleys, written into poems and plays that blend fact and invention. Each retelling shifts with the needs of the teller. Sometimes you are the innocent, the martyr, the scapegoat. Sometimes you are cast as the unfortunate symbol of Rome's impossible bargain with the gods. But the lesson is always the same. Purity, in Rome, is never just a personal matter. The fate of one girl becomes the fate of all, and so mothers watch their daughters with a mixture of pride and terror, wondering whether the honor of being chosen might turn, in a heartbeat, to catastrophe. Priests argue for strict discipline, senators debate new rules, and the old anxieties are dressed in new language. But the fear remains. Rome's greatness is built, as ever, on faith, sacrifice, and the ability to find comfort in ritual, even when those rituals cost more than anyone dares to admit. Yet, in the quiet corners of the city, change does begin to stir. The memory of your fate, heavy as it is, becomes a seed for doubt in some, for compassion in others. Philosophers, poets, and even a few brave senators begin to question, if only softly at first, whether the city's traditions might be too harsh. The debate never grows loud. Rome's foundations are not easily shaken, but every now and then, the memory of a single girl's sacrifice gives someone the courage to speak for mercy, for justice, for a gentler way. The House of the Vestals endures, as does the city. New generations of girls take the vow, their hearts full of hope and fear. Your story is their shadow and their shield. Rome, meanwhile, finds its balance once more. The sacred fire burns. The temples fill with offerings. The people celebrate victories and mourn losses, just as they always have. But somewhere beneath the surface, the city remembers. Your name, spoken quietly, written in secret, prayed in moments of desperation, reminds Rome that even in a world built on sacrifice, there must be room for compassion. In the end, you are more than a warning or a legend. You become a thread in Rome's tapestry, a reminder that the fate of a city is not only decided in marble halls or crowded forums, but in the quiet courage of those who endure, who question, who hope for something better. Your memory lingers in the hearts of those who came after you, a gentle challenge to a world that so often chose fear over kindness. And so, as the years fold into centuries, your story is not forgotten. It lives on in every ritual, every whispered prayer, every sleepless night when someone wonders if the price is too high, if the gods truly demand so much from those who serve them. The city you once walked continues to dream and fear and change. The sacred fire never truly goes out, and in its light, the memory of your courage still glows, a small but stubborn spark, quiet, persistent, and impossible to erase. And now, as the long night stretches out, you let yourself drift on the gentle tide of memory. The weight of marble halls and echoing prayers fades, replaced by the hush of the city after dark. A distant dog barking, the sleepy murmur of water in the fountain, the low hum of a world holding its breath. You imagine yourself, not as a symbol or a warning, but as a girl once more, bare feet on cool stone, the scent of incense clinging to your hair, laughter echoing in the garden beneath a sky full of stars. You find comfort in the rhythm of old rituals, the soft crackle of the sacred fire, the quiet strength of those who walked beside you. The fears of the city dissolve for a moment, replaced by peace, a gentle golden warmth that softens the memory of sorrow. You are not alone here. Your story weaves together with countless others, forming a tapestry of hope and endurance that stretches through the ages. Breathe deeply and let the anxiety of the city fall away. The gods are quiet now, the past is gentle, and you can rest in the knowledge that you were seen, remembered, and loved. Not just for your sacrifice, but for your courage, your laughter, your simple humanity. So close your eyes, let the memories fade to whispers, and drift into the soft embrace of sleep, knowing that the city, like your story, will endure, warmed by the flame that never dies. End of script. Sweet dreams.